So welcome everybody. Should we just jump in? All right. So yeah, thank you for being at the Northwest Timebanking Gathering. And why don't we just start by introducing ourselves, say who you are and what brings you to this gathering. So if you're what Timebank you're with and what stage you're at and what you want to get out of our time here together. And please speak loudly so our guests from afar can hear too. Dave, did you want to just start?
Sure. I'm Dave Asher, and I'm the chair of Timebanks in Puget Sound. I was one of the founders of the Eastside Time Bank, and then was given the mission of being the Johnny Appleseed of time banks in the region. So I'm out trying to start time banks, and we've got West Seattle has just gone active, and Vashon Island should start next month. So we're out trying to do what we set out to do.
I'm Morgan Meadows. I am the coordinator of the iShare Time Bank in the San Juan Islands. I traveled up last night. I've been in communication with Cindy and with Dave about iShare becoming part of under the umbrella of TOPS, so that we don't have to feel like we're out in left field out there. And I wanted to connect with as many people as I could so that I could start having faces to go with the names.
And I'm Linda Benson, and I am also one of the initial people involved with launching Eastside Time Bank. And I'm a Johnny Appleseed groupie, which means I'm also on the TOPS board. I represent Eastside Time Bank on the TOPS board. And I'm here to really get a sense of what are the indicators of a healthy time bank. What are some ways to really begin to understand and measure what makes a healthy time bank?
Edward, can you hear okay?
Yeah, just fine.
Super, thank you.
Great.
Hi, I'm Joan Eads, and I'm with the Eastside Time Bank. And Edgar, you continue to inspire me, and I remember our conference 2 years ago, and that really lit a fire in my belly for time banking.
Hi, I'm Dave Ramsey. I'm also with the Eastside Time Bank. I'm on the board, one of the founding members a few years back. Interests that I have are twofold. One, as Linda was talking about, is energizing the membership and getting more exchanges going. But secondly, the charming topic of financial sustainability, if that's not an oxymoron in this business. But we are struggling to put together a bare bones budget and actually create revenue to support it. So we're looking for a bolt of lightning today that will give us the answer.
Should we have Edgar introduce himself too?
Edgar?
Edgar?
Oh.
Okay. So.
I had asked him to go last, so he can go
Sure,
right into
sure.
whatever else he wants to say. Jennifer Strand with the Central District Time Bank.
Jennifer, could you come over maybe so Edgar can, he's trying to keep up with who's here today. And this is our speaker right here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Jennifer Schramm with the Central District Time Bank, which is Central Seattle, and it launched recently.
I'm Annie Ness. I'm with West Sound Time Bank over on Kitsap Peninsula, Bainbridge Island. I would like also to hear about how to sustain this. And leadership, we are struggling to find people who will keep the time bank going. We've got some burnout issues, and that's me, I burned out. This is the time bank.
Quite an array. You've got quite a number of time banks.
Yeah.
All popping up and sprouting. That's very exciting.
And Bainbridge, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, uses our exchange.
Yes.
Is that
Our
correct?
World, yeah.
Out of Portland, Maine.
Yeah. I'm Mickey Gibson. I'm also with West Sound Time Bank. As Annie said, getting people interested in keeping the time bank going is a problem for us. Getting exchanges
Can't quite
between
hear.
members is a problem.
Sorry.
Mickey Gibson with West Sound Time Bank. Our time bank has been in operation now for about a year and a half, and we had really good membership enrollment to start with, but not much since then. And we're looking at for ways to get both more member exchanges and more people to enroll in the time bank, so we have more things to offer.
Has I'm Stephanie from the Dane County Time Bank in Madison, Wisconsin, traveling around to learn what's going on around the country and around the world, learn what's working and under what local conditions so we can really apply that learning, and sharing what we've learned from our own experience and what I'm learning from other time banks. And we've created some project sharing tools, which I'll be encouraging you to use later. So just looking for ways for us to really mentor and support each other more effectively so we can build on each other's work rather than reinventing the wheel so much.
And Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're using a United Kingdom data set or database for exchanges, is that
Yeah,
correct?
we're using Community Forge.
Community Forge.
Software, yeah. And we don't consider it to be an end-all and be-all, and any software is going to go obsolete at some point. And so I think we're just looking for tools that we can adapt to the different ways that we would like to approach time.
So I'm Cindy Jane originally with the Eastside Time Bank and now with Time Banks of Puget Sound. And yeah, among all the other great ideas for today, interested in partnerships and how we can best partner with other organizations.
I'm James McGregor. I'm from the Swell Time Bank, and I'm just here to meet you guys. Say hi.
He bakes wonderful bread too.
Okay.
Mark Elliott, member of the newly formed West Seattle Time Bank, and just here to listen.
Jan Stewart, I'm chair of Swell Time Bank, which is Northwest King County, Shoreline, Woodway, Edmonds, Lake Sports Park, and surrounding area. And we wanted to come today to connect with other time banks and learn what we can do to help keep things moving. So.
All right, Edgar, it's your turn, right?
That's it, Edgar. So,
Okay. I think the heart of time banking is around mission, and I'll speak sort of in perhaps a rambling way, but hope that we can get some interaction because I'm not a fan of unilateral communication. I think we talk about software, and I think it's very important that the software not divide us. Nobody that I know of, when they get a call from a relative saying, well, I'm on Verizon and you're on T-Mobile, so I can't talk to you. And what links us together are the core values, not the software. The software is simply an instrument. Our problem is, how do we get it for each one of us? How the hell do we support the cost of developing it? But that's a problem that is in miniature the problem that we mentioned of sustainability for the movement and for all of us, because we're really concerned not about whether the software is sustainable, but whether a core set of values that say there are things that money doesn't value and that we do value. And I think sustaining that vision is what we're all concerned about, and wanting to really beat back the monopoly that money has on our thinking, on our definition of what's possible, and on particularly our ability to address those problems, both social and environmental, that the nation seems to give up on, or say it's giving up on, if we don't have, quote, money. And I think that we can give up on the quest, frankly, for justice, and on the quest to honor and value every human being, the values that underlie democracy. I was asked a few days ago, could I give some thought to writing a piece on a new journal that's coming out that Ashoka is sponsoring about democracy. And I felt that time banking is really designed to supply democracy's missing piece. And I'll talk at that level, and then I'll get down to particulars, and then I'll share with you some of my ideas on the sustainability issue and where I'm plugging away, because we're all plugging away, but we all need to share our best hunches. You know, when this nation began, there was something about declaring certain truths to be self-evident that, if you'll excuse the gender, that all men are created equal and we're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Amongst these are rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it seems to me that something happened along the way to government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And it's become government by the privileged, for the privileged, and by the few, for the few. I was looking at some statistics in writing that piece, which said 1/5 of all households control 89% of all wealth. We won't even get to what the 1/2 or 1% control, but 80% of the bottom then are sharing the remaining 11%. And even within that that bottom 80%, they certainly do not share it equally. And what hit me most starkly was a statistic that says 50% of all children in the United States were living below the poverty line in 2010. 50% of all of our children are living below the poverty line. You know, the Supreme Court made clear in Citizens United that speech is free, but money talks. And when money talks, we know the voice of money drowns out the voice of people. And so the power of government, supposedly our government, has become a market commodity for sale to those who can pay the price. And so we're not simply in a let's be nice to each other piece with time banking. We're in a struggle to save democracy itself and to save really fundamental values that have, for some of us, a religious base, for some of us have an ethical base. But we're also challenged to ask ourselves, given these disparities, how do we even begin to make democracy work? At the Kettering Foundation, which was trying to say, how do we stop outsourcing democracy to government agencies and to lobbyists and even to the nonprofit world, I reminded them that making democracy work takes work. And we don't value the work that it takes to make democracy work, the work of holding officials accountable, the work of advancing social justice, the work of keeping the planet sustainable, the work of enabling elders to remain in community regardless of disability. And who has to do that work? It's not just paid professionals, it's everybody has to do that work. So how do we honor that work? And I'm pushing this at this level because I think it's important to keep clear of how fundamental the struggle is, you know, and how strange it is that the things we say we hold most precious, we can't even sustain the lifeblood of your organizations. I'm reminded that time bank coordinators and founders have this weird habit of needing to eat and pay the bills, and you know, and you also have this strange habit of not just living a 9-to-5 day. I'm told that some of you live 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, and we have those weird habits. We have to deal with those realities, and I think time banking represents an effort literally to provide life support to democracy, because I think it's on life support right now. And I think we all know that there are values that are above market price, all the most basic ones: justice, our loved ones, our religious convictions, the sustainability. And so we're standing for something much more basic than, hey, can somebody walk my dog when I'm in the hospital? As important as that is, and I'm a dog lover, so I think that's very important, but I don't think it's the only important thing. And I think that for democracy itself to work, we need a currency that values the contribution from every citizen, young, old, able, disabled. We need that workforce if our schools are to work, if we're going to reduce teenage crime, if we're to make neighborhoods safe, if we're to care for the elderly, and a lot more. And so I think what we are standing for is, in fact, you know, what this country needs most. I thought when I came up with the idea and then started implementing it, that all I had to do was hang a sign on my door saying 1 hour equals one-time credit, out to lunch, please steal this idea. And that would be the end. And then I could get on with other things. Now that's 30 years ago, so it wasn't, it turns out to take a little bit more time. But I do want to stress that we've used time banking to address every critical major problem. And where it's been used and been sustained, it works. It makes a difference that money has not been able to make. And it's hard to make that case, but I think we have to make that case because I think that what has happened in the world of proliferating nonprofits is that we've outsourced being a human being, being all that a human being can be, to the helping professionals and to the nonprofit world and to agencies. And I don't think there's any substitute for what we can do for each other, what we need to do for each other. And that's not to downgrade the importance of the programs that we fight to keep alive, and that in fact, time banking provides a critical element for. Stephanie, you know, runs, not only has founded the Dane County Time Bank, but part of that Dane County Time Bank is the Youth Court, right, Stephanie?
Yes, our favorite.
And that, in the time bank that I've founded here in DC, most of the juries are now former offenders, and they get recidivism down to below 10% for the first 6 months, and it never rises above 10% even a year later. We know in Rhode Island that time banking has been used to enable kids who otherwise might be institutionalized because they're bipolar or schizophrenic or have autism or are suffering from severe emotional disability and distress. Those kids have not had to be institutionalized because the parents, rather than let the state take them away, has formed their own support network that functions like an extended family. And I think that's brilliant. And all over the country, we're seeing social workers employed to deal with the abuse and neglect. But what that means is they're employed to take kids away from families rather than keep families together and preserve and sustain those families. We're seeing in Chicago, we saw 5th and 6th graders, many of whom were labeled ADD, be able, by being turned into tutors of 1st and 2nd graders, suddenly they found out that they could function, and test scores went up, schools went off suspension, and we know that the fighting after school went down. So that we have a way of really addressing schools that don't function. And I don't think there's a public school system in the country, particularly an urban school system, which isn't experiencing 30% dropouts. We saw in Oakland where a distressed neighborhood, a neighborhood distressed by violence and racially polarized because of an incoming wave of Hispanic workers into a previously historically black neighborhood. And we saw that violence go down, whereas it went up in most every other neighborhood in Oakland. but time banking, not just the neighborhood exchanges, but the health fairs they put on and the other events they put on, reduced violence, whereas it was going up all over. In Appalachia, in one of the most deeply distressed communities, the Time Bank has figured out an enterprise that teaches people how to create how to use solar panels and make them into panels that can be wired, that can convert sunlight to electricity and to heat. And so in the heart of coal country, they are reducing the carbon footprint and they're reducing their own heating bills, and they can take out a loan for the lumber, but what they're doing now is you can take out a loan for the cost of the materials to winterize your home and to heat and to get solar panels so that you can do without coal to heat it, and then pay back the loan by splitting the cost savings you get each month and paying back that loan. But the other part of the loan is a time bank loan that you put in over the years. And we were in Kent, Ohio, and we were talking to some of the folks in Habitat, and they were talking about not just individual houses, but creating a whole habitat development. And I said, well, why don't you have a habitat two-tier mortgage? Because they do have a mortgage that's below market price, but why can't you take out a 30-year time bank mortgage as well as a 30-year dollar mortgage to enable those houses to then pay back that part of the mortgage by creating the community activities and the community child care, elder care, landscaping, community garden that will make values go up, but that will in fact really build a community, because a house is just a house, but a community is different from a house. It's a community of network of people who trust each other and know what they can do. Right now, I'm seeing funding for programs for every vulnerable population cut. And I'm seeing a 17% cut in legal services for people who can't afford lawyers and for the poorest of the poor. And I'm seeing, frankly, some of the energy, some of the vision, I'm seeing burnout there, frankly. I'm seeing a loss of the kind of hope and sense that if people went into law, they could help people with legal services, and that we could advance the cause for equal justice. And I'm seeing that die down, and I'm saying, well, we need to enlist some troops. And why aren't we enlisting the clients and asking them to pay it forward? And why can't we create partnerships between time banks and legal service programs and ask the clients to join the time bank as a way of paying back for the help they've gotten? Well, that's being pioneered in Oregon, in one rural area, and it's being pioneered now in Miami by the University of Miami Legal Services, which is in fact helping veterans in the veterans hospitals assert their rights to a whole variety of benefits. And one of the things that's happening is the veterans are saying, we want to pay it forward by helping other veterans, and so they're paying a time bank retainer in return for the legal services they get from the University of Miami. So the possibilities are open-ended. And when I say, what is your mission? Ask yourself how you can make a difference in the community, not just for individuals helping individuals, but what kinds of issues does your time bank want to take on? And I'm promoting the idea, frankly, of a dream circle. Every member of your time bank, or most of them, join the time bank not just because they want to help others, but they have a dream. They have a dream of how they want to make a difference. And they can't do it alone. Well, there are rotating loan circles where people who want to go into business loan money to each other, and when the first one pays back, then the second one has access to all of that money, and the third one, and it rotates around. Why can't we have a time bank dream circle where somebody says, well, I want to make childcare different. I want to make it available Saturday. I want to make Head Start available Saturday mornings, and that's the difference I'd like to make. And somebody else says, well, I like to make sure that no kid reaches fourth grade without being at least at third grade level. And could we set up a tutoring program? And so why don't we invest in each other's dreams, and why don't we make that part of what being part of a time bank is? Because I think we're all dreamers, and all of the people in the time bank are dreamers, but they can't do it alone. And so if we're here for each other, why don't we begin to think about setting up a rotating dream club within a time bank for those, and everybody will pitch in to help realize that dream, and then that person in turn will pitch in to help the next person's dream. So let me just suggest that as a way of beginning to give a different kind of energy, or a way of beginning to realize and sustain the hopes and the passions of people who join your time bank. I'll drift over now to what I'm hoping could be a sustainability strategy that we're working on here. And the very first investment in time banks was by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to see if well elderly could keep frail elderly out of nursing homes. And what they found that emerged was not a barter system, but really a social network. They didn't quite know what to do with it, and they didn't know whether it would work. I think that we now know it works and it makes a difference, and even programs that are not, quote, sustainable, the relationships continue, and nothing can take away from you the sense that you made a difference in somebody else's life, or that you received help, and that help was part of a relationship, not simply a commercial transaction where you paid and the relationship ended. So even the ones that couldn't survive made a lasting difference. But I want to acquaint you all with a decision that we're working on called the Olmsted decision. In 1999, the Supreme Court of the United States decided that if there were people in nursing homes who wanted to return to community, and they were put there because of their disabilities, that constituted discrimination that violated the Americans with Disabilities Act, and every state had a duty to create a plan that would enable people who wanted to return to the community and who didn't have to stay in the nursing home in order to get that level of care, but who could get that level of care by home-based services. They had a right not to be discriminated against simply because of their disability. In other words, they didn't have to give up their liberty in order to get the care, the help they needed. And recently, the District of Columbia was sued by some 500 people in nursing homes who wanted to return to community. And so we're trying to help both the plaintiffs and the district by injecting informal care with formal care. And we're putting that together, and we're hoping that as we do, we'll be creating a model. But we think that the system will actually then pay for that, the informal care, because it enriches the formal care, and it creates a way of providing the services that prevent caregivers from burning out and giving up. And I'll just read you one article that I got, which was kind of interesting, from the Journal of Aging and Health, that says, while there has been less research focused on the value of assisting others in informal settings, the giving of informal support has been found to be more beneficial in later life than receiving support. Changing Lives in Retirement study revealed that five-year mortality was significantly reduced for married older adults who reported giving instrumental support to friends, family, or neighbors, and those who provided emotional support to their spouse. Receiving support had no significant impact on mortality.
What's that
Well,
from?
this is an article from, hold on, let me give you the site, and I can send you that, but it's from the Journal of Aging and Health,
Thank you.
February 2013.
Thank you.
And there are other articles that it cites too. But I think that we know that the cost of putting a person in a nursing home runs between $58,000 and $90,000 a year. And the state, and Medicare and Medicaid and state agencies on aging pay for a large chunk of that. I think that if time banking could be part of the help they get in getting people out of nursing homes, because the average cost of providing the full array of home-based services for a person out of a nursing home, the average cost, according to one court decision, was around $23,000. Well, even if you multiply that by 2 and make it 46,000, you've saved the government 20,000. I should say that some 60% of all personal bankruptcies stem from healthcare related costs. So we know that families go broke trying to keep their parents out of a nursing home, okay? So I'm going to suggest that at least one sustainability strategy is to begin thinking about and exploring how one could be a source of respite for caregivers and for their families. And that's going to involve dialogue with the state, dialogue with the offices on aging. But I think that the value of informal care everywhere is important, but it's nowhere near as monetizable as when it's keeping people out of nursing homes. So I'm sorry, I've talked on and on and on, but anyway.
You
for
can keep
openers,
going with these
let's-
kind of ideas.
I mean it.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you, Edgar.
Fabulous.
That was.
What
Well, I want
questions?
you guys, look, we are a revolutionary force to try to save democracy, to try and save community. And it's not, and let me talk briefly about leadership. Leadership in time banking is, can we make a transaction into a catalyst that unleashes the capacity of others? So there's nothing wrong with being the first person to say we can, but it is wrong to be the last person to say that, and to be the only person to say that. And so the reciprocity that we bring to transactions, that we promote, and I think you ought to go to, one of the most powerful programs is the Allentown program, which injected time banking into reentry back into the community, into hospital discharge. I think one of the most powerful programs is for those who are coming out of prison to give back and to pay it forward. And they're doing that in Washington, D.C. by getting up every morning and providing the safe passage for kids across gang territory in some of the most dangerous wards in the city. So the idea of giving back is a fundamental, and take a look at the movie Pay It Forward. I think we ought to launch a national Pay It Forward movement. We're the ones who know how to do that.
Absolutely. Questions or comments? You have the oracle here. I would like to get, if it's possible, that we could get a draft of the article that you did for Ashok.
For the Ashoka folks, happy to do that.
Yeah.
Sure, Dave.
Thank you. Other things, comments, questions, insights, problems, aches and pains?
Thank you.
You know, there is one ache and pain that all of us have had in time banking aside from the money, and that is getting people to spend their time credits.
Yes.
And people do not like to ask for help. I think some of the best orientations have been one where people have said, you got to, before you leave the room, you got to cut a deal where where you do something for somebody in the room and where you agree to receive some help from somebody in the room. And I think paying dues for time for a time bank program in time credits makes sense. I think that I think we need to brainstorm about how, because we live in a country where our ethos is it's wrong to ask for help. And yet nobody can earn a time credit if nobody will accept help, and that was a dilemma from the very beginning.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I'm going to, sometime this afternoon, when we get a chance, I'm going to read an excerpt of, from your book, No More Throwaway People, the story about Joe. That, to me, is so profound, and it was worth the whole book just for that one piece. Thank you for that.
Well, look, thank you all for gathering and for doing what you're doing. It's such vital work, not just for your community, but really, we've never seen such extensive disparity in wealth and opportunity in this country, and we need fundamentally to raise the floor. I don't think we're going to do away with the disparity, but I was sort of trying to do something that said, what would happen if we somehow got launched into the year 2030, like looking backwards, launched the person from the 1800s into the year 2000. And in the year 2030, every single baby boomer will have reached 65 or older. Baby boomers are crossing the 65-year-old mark at the rate of 10,000 a day for the next 17 years. That's a pretty significant number. And I haven't met many baby boomers who admit they're aging, but they do admit that they have older parents whom they've got to care for. And that means that there will be a law. Now, either we view that as a fiscal disaster with Medicare and Medicaid, and you'll read plenty of those articles, or we view it as the first time in history where we had a large number of gifted, experienced, wise, and able people doing the work of making democracy work, doing the work of helping to build families and community, and doing the work of civic engagement. So we are, and also doing the work of learning. I think the concept of a college of the third age, I don't think learning ever can stop. And so the work of the future is learning and giving. And we have a supply of people who want to have a meaningful impact on the lives of others and who want to think about a legacy. And some of you know that I had a major heart attack at the age of 44, and it blew away 60% of my heart. They didn't give me much of a chance to live, and they told me at best I would have 2 hours a day. And I thought, well, I don't want to be useless. And that was 1980. And that was when I started thinking, and Ronald Reagan had come in to cut all the social programs. And I thought, well, we got lots of, quote, useless people and lots of social problems. Why can't we put the two together? I'm now 78. The latest echocardiogram says my heart is 85% healed. And Chris will tell you that as best she's known me, I've had only 2 week vacation in the 12 years that she and I have, or the now 14 years that she and I have known each other, and I work a 7-day week and a 16-hour day. So I can speak personally to making a difference is literally life-giving. And I think that we have an opportunity really to enlist the baby boomers and everybody in saying, what's the world we want to try and create? What's the world we want to leave for our kids and their kids? So I'll shut up now and sign off, but you all have a very special opportunity to change the world.
Edgar, I have just one question. Do we have
Yeah.
any sense of what the average age of a time banker is?
I was told that somewhere between 40 and 60% of most time bankers is over 60.
Ooh.
I'd love to find out ways of bringing in youth.
Now, it varies. Obviously, the youth court is an exception, and the cross-age peer tutoring is an exception, but but I get those reports from England, the similar figures from England and from Scotland and Wales, yeah, and Ireland.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Edgar. I think it was wonderful to have you share your wisdom with the audience here and kick off our afternoon session.
Well, thank you. I envy you having Stephanie there, but Stephanie will get you on the East Coast soon, right?
Yeah, yes.
Thanks so much.
Okay, great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so actually just going off of what Edgar was talking about, I want to actually start, I'm just going to shift a little bit the order in which we do things, because I thought the point that he made about, actually I thought that dream circle idea was just absolutely beautiful. And, oh great. And when we're talking about leadership development, so we will talk about leadership development as clearly a need that we all have. Pardon?
Would you like help describe?
I will later. The first part I'm going to have to draw just because it's
Okay.
just because it's more complicated than speaking. Well, some of it is, some of it isn't. So,
Stephanie, you need to use a mic. Mic number 3 up there is very powerful. And
Okay.
they can pick it up on that mic.
so you want me to use the mic? Is that the deal?
Can she
Okay.
hold it?
It's
Can I
just such a
do
big
everyone
room.
around?
Is it this one right here, the one that?
No. I'm going to just see if we can make this so it doesn't feed back, so it'll kind of pick up. But
There you go.
is that all right? I can't really stand at the podium and do this. So I just.
Portable mic up there.
Oh.
Mic number 3, you need to turn it on.
Oh, right here. Okay, I see. Thank you.
So big.
Okay, okay. I think, okay, good. So just to get a quick show of hands, whose time bank is geared toward bringing your community together, and that's the main purpose of it? Okay, and does anyone have a different mission for your time bank? Did anyone create your time bank in service of doing something else? Okay, so it is common that most time banks do start with the mission of bringing community together, but also a lot of time banks start without really thinking about their mission. And so I just wanted to just draw this sort of little circle, and it is more of a circle. I used to draw it as an arc. Because I think it's just really important to remember all the pieces, your vision, your mission, and your objectives. Has anyone done this, like for a grant proposal or anything? Broken it down? Do you want to share how you did it? Like can you say in a nutshell sort of what your vision statement is and your mission statement? It doesn't have to be exact.
Unfortunately, I don't think I can without being able to read it. It's not
Sure.
something that stays in my head.
So I just always want to remind people about this stuff. So vision I think of as the why, like what's the world look like when you've accomplished what you want to accomplish. So that for me is kind of the why. The mission is what, like, what do you do to get the world to become that way? So, you know, in a lot of time makes your vision is a community of people who support each other, who know each other, and your mission is you'll do that through facilitating time bank exchange. And then your objectives are the specific goals that you're gonna accomplish, and that might be, we'll have gatherings, we'll do dream circles, we'll encourage people to exchange in this context, or that context will facilitate in-home care for people who need it. So I just think it's really important to remember these things as you do as you do all of your planning and leadership developments. So I'm going to share some of the things that we have done. Can we put the PowerPoint back up just so I remind myself of all the different pieces that we need to get into? I'm just, in your packet, you have a picture. Does everyone have a packet? There's some extras on that table too. On page 4, okay. So this is the Dane County Time Bank long-term vision. So our vision was also related to bringing people together in a network of mutual support, but we had sort of laid out a lot of different sectors of the community that we wanted to connect. So we started with an idea that, are people familiar, raise your hand if you're familiar with the term co-production. So just kind of in a nutshell, co-production is about working hand in hand between individuals in the community and organizations, maybe agencies that do service, but working hand in hand to create outcomes together rather than one group serving another group. And you know, one of the core principles of time banking is that we're all diminished by dividing society into separate categories of givers and receivers. We all enjoy giving, we all need to receive, and that we do better working together. So one impetus for me to start the Dane County Time Bank was just realizing that all these individuals and organizations with very common values and common goals were being pitted against each other for scarce resources. But then when I thought about what resources are actually scarce that we're fighting over, it's exactly one, and that's money. And if we boil it down to the things that we really need, a lot of those we can provide for each other. So I set out to start a time bank where I had sort of the kernel of the vision. I knew that I wanted to connect all these different pieces and players, and so I needed to have enough of a framework to invite people onto and not compromise my own values and my own motivation for starting the time bank. This might be familiar to you, but not fleshed out so much that people couldn't come in and take ownership and share their own ideas. So we pretty quickly established this long-term vision to show that we wanted to connect all these people. And then we went about recruiting people from the different segments of the community that we wanted to be sure to connect, and developed our leadership team based on the ones that we found that were enthusiastic. I mean, of course, you can't really do it with the people, you know, drag anyone kicking and screaming into it. But we were able to get enough representation that we could start developing our time bank. We developed just like everyone else does, by attracting small groups of people and finding who in the neighborhood is interested and then engaging them. So we developed as a free-flowing neighbor-to-neighbor time bank with the goal of using that as a resource base to do projects. And Edgar mentioned one of our pet projects is running a restorative justice youth court. We learned what they were doing in Washington, D.C. and found it extremely compelling. And sort of our approach has been to try everything, like throw it all at the wall and see what sticks. But just to really recognize that time banking is a tool to accomplish whatever it is you want to accomplish. And that's worked out really well for us, and it's been very essential in the leadership development piece, but in every piece, including our sustainability strategy and including about how we structure our time and activities.
You glossed over mining for members. Will you come back to that?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I'm going to just jump right into that. Actually, we'll talk about the leadership roles, and you have that in your packet too. It's not so these leadership roles in a time bank. You don't need a person to carry out every one of these. I mean, you don't need a separate person for each one of these functions, but these are essentially functions that need to happen in a time bank. So the way we started was we made a partnership early on with an organization that puts out a little neighborhood newspaper. Do you guys have any of those around here? They're like usually for a small neighborhood, and it's a small paper, comes out monthly. Those things are the most wonderful way to do outreach for a time bank, in my opinion. They're always looking for content, so often they're very happy to write about you. They have a community bent, and so they want people to know the resources in the community, and everyone reads them. It just seems like everyone reads them. So we started having someone write articles for the neighborhood paper, and then we had a little informational session. The people who showed up joined the time bank right then, and we enlisted them to do the work of hosting our kickoff about, I think, a month or 2 months later. So we gave them all time bank hours. Our time bank pays out hours to people to do all the work that's required of running the time bank, and we take the approach that all work's valuable. Redefining work is one of the core values of time banking. At first we were nervous about having a negative balance in our account, and then we realized, of course we need to pay out hours for everything that's done in the time bank, and that's a very good way to generate them and get them out into the community. And as you know from doing time banking, no one has a positive balance unless someone has a negative balance. And we think it's ultimately very appropriate for organizations and projects that are doing things for the community to be the ones to pay out the hours and have as much of a negative balance as it requires to generate that work. And people can donate hours back to those projects, or you can hold classes and workshops and earn hours back. But there's no reason we need to be constrained by this sort of scarcity sickness that we've all been immersed in because we're in the economy that we're in. All the money in your pocket was lent out into existence, and it was lent at interest. So the time bank hours that we're creating by creating a negative balance in a project, those are credits that now exist, and they're backed by generativity. They're backed by something that's creating value in the community. So we think that's an entirely excellent and appropriate way to get time bank hours out into circulation. And then also when people work together on a project, they get to know each other a little bit, and they're a lot more comfortable going out and doing exchanges one-on-one. So it helps in a number of ways. And early on, I always share these same stories, but early on when we were learning about time banking, we were very alarmed that when we learned that people tend to form relationships and then stop reporting their hours. And then we realized it's very good if people form relationships and stop reporting their hours. And a friend of mine put it, if you come together to build a barn and then you're done with the barn and you stop building it, it doesn't mean you failed. So if you build that barn of the personal relationships, that's excellent. And for us, another mind shift was we were very concerned about numbers of exchanges. Like, is everyone exchanging? We need to be sure everyone does an exchange once a month. Then we realized if someone doesn't want or need to make an exchange, there's no reason we need to be pushing people to make an exchange. The time banks there is a resource, so people can access the things that they need when they need them. It's great to be encouraging people to get to know each other and make sure people are comfortable asking for help, and that's a whole different problem, and it is a barrier that needs to be surmounted. But just focusing on exchanges for us wasn't compelling enough, and it became much more focused on the goals that we can accomplish through time banking. And I started kind of calling it applied time banking, because a lot of us do neighbor-to-neighbor time banking, and it's wonderful, and I don't at all mean to diminish the power of that. It's absolutely an excellent thing, and we really need that basic rebuilding of community and rebuilding of trust. But only so many people are motivated by that, and only so many people are motivated by changing our economy. But everyone's motivated by some certain things, like making sure their mother can get care when she's ill, or cleaning up their community park, or making sure there's access to good food, or for me it was really applying things toward the racial disparity in the criminal justice system. I have been long motivated to do something about that, and until I learned about time banking, I didn't really realize there was anything I could do. So what I want to do very briefly, well, as briefly as I can, is just do this little game about if you were going to start a time bank in support of a particular mission or vision. Can I just stick it on here? And how we would go about doing that, and then we can talk about how we bring in leadership and bring in the different stakeholders. So can you just think of something that you would like to see happen in your community. What's a vision that you have for your community? We'll just take a few at random, and whatever you can think of your community in whatever way you want, but just say some dream that you have for your community.
Reducing the carbon footprint.
Reducing carbon footprint, okay. What else?
Starting businesses, cooperative businesses that you help people who are now in very low income situations have meaningful work.
All right, co-op businesses, especially for low income?
Yeah.
Well, this is great, because this is turning out to be a lot of the mission of a project we're just working on now.
Fighting City Hall.
Fighting City Hall. All right, well, these three things all go very nicely together, and it's great because they're really different from what usually come up in this exercise. All right, so this is our mission. We have a new time bank forming, or a new group of people forming that realize we can use time banking as a tool to accomplish our goal. We want to reduce our carbon footprint while creating a cooperative business that especially works with, engages people of low income as owners, and empowers all of us to fight City Hall or work with City Hall to achieve the outcomes we would all like to see.
There you go.
All right, so who do we need to engage to make this work? Just start throwing them out there. Who do we need to engage? And you can think about organizations, or you can also think about, like, if you know someone, if you have a friend or family member that comes to mind who would be great at this, you can just say their name and what it is.
We have two organizations on Bainbridge that I think might be useful. One of them is Helpline House, which is works with low-income people in various ways, counseling and food and that kind of stuff. And the other one is a housing resources board.
Housing Resources Board. Okay. Who else?
Someone who can do energy audits, total energy audits.
Okay.
It's a successful business owner.
Okay. Who else?
How about some kind of working group to help think through all this?
Okay. Where will you recruit them from?
Folks in the community.
Okay. Working group. So community, that'd be sort of like community leader kind of people, or like, how would you identify them?
Folks that want to make a difference.
Okay.
It could become a board later on.
Okay.
A working group right now.
Okay. How would you reach that working group?
Pardon me?
How would you find that working group?
Probably start reaching out to people that I knew and ask them who they
Okay.
knew. And
Okay. Through your networks and then pushing out through their networks. Great. Sorry, my writing is terrible today. It's always terrible, but it's extra terrible. All right. Who else?
Excuse me. Sustainability organizations and movements.
Okay. Who else?
Neighborhood associations.
Okay.
City council members,
Okay.
local utilities.
Renegade City Council.
Local college, university.
Okay.
Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
Environmental organization.
Who else?
We're going to get the kids involved at the school level and outside of school.
Okay. Kids in and out of school. How do you find the ones who are outside of school?
On the playground.
Okay. Go on the playground and recruit.
Variety of nonprofits that work with.
Nonprofits. Who else? Who have we forgotten? Who have we forgotten? Look at our mission.
Well, low income people.
Yeah. How do we find them?
Go to the food bank.
Okay. So we go to the food bank. How else?
Churches.
churches,
Social service providers.
social service providers, and we're going there to help find the low-income people to participate? Okay. And the providers can participate for recruitment and participation, all good. Who else have we forgotten?
Community in general, I mean, like the homeowners for the carbon footprint homeowners, business owners.
Okay.
Housing projects.
Local governance.
Okay. I'll put that with the city council. Anyone else? Do we have a good enough crew now?
Papers.
Bankers?
Papers.
Oh, papers? Like the media? you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's an important one. So I already mentioned those little neighborhood papers, and those are great. And then even just take a little detour. Normally we can do like a whole session on media, but I'm just going to give you a few pointers. Because a lot of times people say, oh, how do you get the word out? Do you pay for advertising? And we've never paid for advertising, but we get tons of press. And there are a couple basic things. Number one is that we do have a guide to writing press releases on our website at danecountytimemake.org. We have a Tools for Time Makers page, and there's a whole sort of checklist for doing intros and orientation sessions, and there's a thing about writing press releases. And it's just a really simple formula, and if you remember to send press releases before you do an event, like a month before, and then resend it a few days before, and follow up with a phone call especially to be sure they got it, you will get press. But another aspect of it is to just try not to be shy or just push yourself out of your comfort zone. If you do feel shy, and form relationships with your local journalists by calling them and saying, did you get the email press release? We'd love to have you come out and cover this. So then getting to recruiting different audiences in different ways. Different kinds of press, of course, are going to reach different people. So a lot of people read those neighborhood papers. They're the free weekly papers, which are often easy to get into. But one thing that I just learned by accident, I just suddenly realized whenever we got TV coverage, we would suddenly get more calls from people who are homebound, who with disabilities, or people who are elderly. And so it's really good to think about, who is your target audience, or are you lacking membership in a certain area? And then think about the kind of media sources that they respond to. So people were talking about going out and tabling at a festival. You'll get a totally different crowd of people tabling at a festival than you will getting TV coverage. So that stuff is important. So it's good to mention the papers and media and think about how we engage them. And of course, if they actually are getting involved in the time make and they're getting excited about it, they'll give you a whole different kind of depth. So now what we're gonna do is take these parties and we're gonna just make up. So my project is sort of the granting agency. It's just gonna spend as many hours as it needs to create itself. But it will take some facilitation to get started. So we are collectively the project facilitators now. Where are we going to start? So we can look at these participants and let's just say we're going to pay out some hours to someone to get the ball rolling. So what are we going to do? We're going to reduce our carbon footprint, working towards starting cooperative business for low-income people, and partnering with, when we can, fighting City Hall when we need to make this happen. So where do we start to get the ball rolling? There's no wrong answer here. We're just making it up as we go, just like in real life.
Well, you find out from the folks who are having the conversation, who want to continue the conversation, do they want to focus on a particular aspect of that and form a team that goes off and does more research and maybe grabs more people.
So we are going to start with our working group, giving them time make hours to go out and do more research today. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, and then what are they going to do? So they have hours to spend. What's their next step? They're going to spend hours to do what?
Putting together a plan is the plan of action.
Okay, and who might they ask for assistance? Who might they hire with their hours to help them put together a plan of action? Sorry, you can't see this.
No, all the above, yeah.
Okay,
For example,
Anyone-
they may want to work with a local university, have a class adopt this project as something for part of the program.
Oh, okay, so the class would help put together the plan? Okay, and who else would you want to have put together the plan?
You want the people that are energized to get something done,
Mm-hmm.
and you go where the energy is.
Okay, so the energized people.
So you have three pretty distinct programs, or do you want to approach them all as one? Or do you
Yeah, we're
divide
gonna
them up?
approach them as one. So we will start a co-op business that will help us reduce our carbon footprint, and we will need the cooperation of City Hall in order to do that. And this actually maps right onto something that we're doing in Madison.
One of the models the transition groups is using is they are finding the folks who have a love or a passion for a particular area. So the folks who love to connect with the City Hall folks, they're doing specific research, raising the questions, coming up with a plan. They see themselves as a big group, but they break into smaller groups, get things done, and report back with some form of celebration, check-in, that.
And is there a particular strategy for finding those people to start?
Yes. Well, one of the things we've done is we've created, say, stations in a room where there could be, say, 4 to 6 task team options.
Okay.
And then people could sign up under those headings for what would need to happen in each of those categories, and then people could go up and put their name on the one or two that they'd like to participate in.
Great. So now let's get into the nitty gritty of how we make that happen. So you have some time bank hours that you want to set up a big room with task team stations. So what needs to happen? You could spend time bank hours on what to facilitate that?
I would contact the people who have the space. So I would
you might
coordinate.
offer hours for the
I
space.
would want hours to get the space
Great.
set up, and I would want hours in communicating with the people who would be coming to help creating the stations for people.
Okay, so you pay hours to the organizers.
Yeah,
for
the
creating
organizers.
station. How are you going to get people there?
I'm going to bribe them with food.
How are you going to let them know it exists? And you don't have to be the only one answering. How are you going to let people know this is happening?
Media.
Pardon?
The media.
Okay, so you could contact the media. How else?
The networks of the people who are doing the work.
Yeah, so the
That
networks
are
of the people
passionate.
doing the work. How are you going to start reaching the people who are low income, unemployed, underemployed?
You go back to those organizations that are working with those people already.
Okay, so you could hit the organizations. Maybe you could find someone in that boat who is enthusiastic about the project and give them hours to spread the word. How about offering hours to all these people that we want to engage and get them in on the ground floor? You know, we don't necessarily, in the time banking model, we don't necessarily want to only work with the professionals and organizations to create the program that is designed to support the low income people, right? So early on, when we get these networks of people doing work, find out who is in the group that we really want to engage in this, and pay them some hours to get the word out into their networks. And I would think that would be one of the most important early steps, most essential. And again, it goes back to you want to have enough of a framework that you're inviting people into something, that you want to really create the invitation for people to come and take ownership of it. And if we're going to be doing something that is especially for people of low income, we want them to have ownership of it from the very outset. So
Shouldn't they be one of the organizers?
yes.
At the very top?
Yes. And especially low income. And you might find those folks through organizations that support people. You might find them at Occupy. A lot of people's Occupy movements are
Find them in your program.
You might find them in your program. Yeah, you might find them on your block.
I was gonna say your next door neighbor.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yourself.
a major proponent of going door to door. And a lot of what we're doing in Madison now is working on building up our capacity to go door to door. We are creating one of these about energy. And as one of our early steps is to teach a bunch of people how to go door to door and offer in-home energy consultations, and at the same time invite them to participate in our co-op and our time bank. And so that's, right, we're just getting that going now. But it's kind of perfect that this ended up being the mission, because it really is exactly something that we're working on. All right, great. So we now have this task team sign-up thing. We have people getting going. We've gotten the word out through people going door to door and contacting the media and putting up so what would be another way to get the word out? Well, how else could you spend your time bank hours to get the word out effectively?
Say flyers.
Yeah, I was about to say flyers. Have an artist in your time bank design your flyers or something. And I am deliberately trying to have us pay hours to a whole lot of different people, because why?
You're building the time bank.
Right.
Yeah, it's greasing the wheels. They've engaged. They've had the practice. Everything that's been successful with us and with, the thing that's very powerful to me about time banking in general is it's a great experiential learning tool. Like, people come to our time bank because they need a ride to the doctor and can't find it any other way. But once they get in the time bank, then they see all these different potentials. They see a lot of different paths they could go down, and they can get inspired and motivated themselves. And people need to see that things can happen differently in order to really believe it, because we've all grown up in this very separation and competition-oriented society that's built on scarcity. And I think you can talk till you're blue in the face sometimes about all the potential benefits of time banking and different ways of living, but until people experience, especially people who've really been victimized by that system, until they experience that it can happen differently, it's really hard to believe it can happen differently. And once you do start experiencing that, it can just open a whole lot of doors.
Have you found social media to be effective or more traditional media?
Both. I think in some time things, social media is like everything. Everyone's connecting on Facebook. I think Facebook is a double-edged sword, and this is just, I guess it's not just me personally. I think it reflects a lot of people's use, because there are a lot of people who don't use Facebook for lots of very good reasons, and so they're automatically excluded if that's your number one way of communicating, but it can be extremely effective. So I don't discourage anyone from using it, but I do encourage people to think about how to make sure everyone's included if they're not on Facebook. So, all right, so we have these task team signups and we have people going. Let's make up some of the other things that people are gonna do. So you all came and signed up for task teams. You might have created some task teams. What next? So the task teams are all free to offer time bank hours for people to help make this go forward. So what would you want to start doing to reduce your carbon footprint and work toward? You're not going to instantly have a cooperative, but work toward a cooperative business.
Wouldn't there need to be a little bit more education for those who maybe they're not active in the time bank a whole lot, but you're doing outreach into the community? So you need someone who's in the know,
Okay.
who you can give time bank hours to, who can come and educate everyone together on some of those steps that need to be taken care of that are practical
Okay.
for reducing the footprint.
And who do you think would be good educators from here? Maybe your energy auditor?
Yes.
And maybe you need some education in how you can structure yourselves as a business or toward a business. What do you think?
So through your Chamber of Commerce, you could probably find some folks, as well as even just looking in the phone book.
Yep.
Civic organization should be involved.
Civic, yeah.
Rotary type.
Yeah, so maybe we would have one task team looking into business models and development, and they're engaging the Chamber of Commerce and business organizations. And I'm sorry, I already lost.
Rotary.
And Rotary. Maybe they'll be able to use the university. So we have a task team figuring out the energy piece. We have a task team figuring out the business piece. What else? Then what?
Gotta go back. It seems that we're making an assumption that a really key person is needed. thinking someone like yourself, who is a very good organizer, motivator, facilitator, and manager, because this is an incredibly complex process that we're envisioning here.
Motivator. This is really good for you to break these down.
Someone needs to appear.
Hold it together.
Leadership. Do you think it would have to be all one person?
No.
Okay, so maybe it could be a team.
Yep.
And this maps on a lot to these leadership roles that you have here. So this has ones that are very specific to time making, but they map on very much. The ambassador would be sort of the motivator. And facilitation is everything in time making. A manager sort of maps onto the administration and team leadership. Finding the resources, let's put resource developments. And how might you find these people? I mean, that's one of the things that makes it really difficult to start a time bank in a lot of situations, is it kind of all falls onto one person. So how have each of you found the support you need? Or if you haven't yet, we'll talk about how you might. So I will share with you something that I learned recently in a facilitation class. I have taken a few classes with a group called Art of Hosting. Does anyone know that organization? It's really wonderful. So if you ever get a chance to do Art of Hosting training, it's really great. It's about helping you understand how to navigate, they call it chaotic processes, but doing the dance between chaos and order. That's essential, if anything. Yeah, that's a D. Hock term, the guy who founded Visa. But so I'm always reluctant to use it. Just, I mean, nothing wrong with him or anything, but it's just so jargony. But you know, there always is going to be some chaos if you're trying to do something new, and being able to do the dance, accepting the chaos and embracing it, and then being able to put some order to it so you can keep finding your path forward and kind of going back and forth between those. But I was at an Art of Hosting training, and someone just mentioned something that was so helpful to me, which, because I've experienced it over and over through my life, but I hadn't had a good, nice understanding of it, which is that he says there are 3 different types of people who start a project, continue a project, and finish a project. There are sowers and farmers and harvesters. And I thought, thank you so much, because you know, then you can plan around that. And yeah, I've been involved in community organizing stuff since I was 19, and it's always the case. You get your leadership team together, and then a bunch of people fall away, and it's so stressful if you haven't planned for it, or if you don't realize it's a natural part of human behavior. And so, to me, it's always really essential to be casting a wider net than what you really need. Expect that a smaller percentage of the group are going to carry the work, because that's how it goes. And some it's not because people are lazy or bad people or whatever, but a lot of people have life circumstances intervene, or they might think they're a sower and then realize they just really didn't have what it took to stick with it. So always cast a wider net, and always be looking for the people who are going to be your farmers, and then be looking for your people who are going to be the harvesters. And I think so much of time making and so much of every kind of organizing that's successful is about meeting people where they are. So appealing to responding to what people are motivated to do, and just really working on filling the gaps with people who are enthusiastic about their one particular part. So another aside is, we really looked into our best time bank ambassador early on. And I'm going to recommend that any of you in a leadership role who are willing to do this, take this on yourselves, or find the people who are motivated to take it on. But our ambassador was just a natural ambassador who joined the time bank and then took it upon herself to use the services of new members. So new members would join, and she would call up and engage them in whatever it was they were offering to do. Or she could offer to fill a request. It made a huge difference. And again, it's the experiential learning thing. Like, they get a chance to have an exchange right away, and they have some practice, and then they have a time bank hour. So the ones who are reluctant to go into negative don't have to, because she did it for them. She went ahead and spent that time bank hour. So I'm going to recommend that. So in your working group that you started with at the beginning, that would be some of the really early work of just really inviting your networks and their networks of networks to find people who can fill these roles and create your working group. So ideally your working group that you start with has these or has a lot of the pieces, and whatever ones they don't have, they have enough understanding that they need it, that they'll be looking for it. Is that helpful?
Is it important to have one person sort of managing all of these leaders, or is there a chair?
In my experience, it is important to have someone who sort of is a coordinator. I think of it as a coordinator, that just to be sure that all the pieces are happening and communicating with each other. And for similar reasons, I think that's why time banks who are able to have a paid coordinator tend to have a little bit stronger success. And I don't at all want to discourage people from pursuing a different model, because really the thing about the paid coordinator is just that they can put enough time and focus to it. If someone can put enough time and focus to it without getting money, that's great too. If you have a thriving enough time bank that the time bank hours can really support them, or if someone doesn't really have to be finding other work to support themselves. One thing that I was realizing for my time bank, and I think it's true of a lot, we started with no money, so my whole first year of exploration and recruiting people was volunteer basis. And then once the time bank was up and running, we started with a $6,000 grant. So once the time bank was up and running, I got about $1,000 a month as a stipend, and then I got hours, so we considered that for half of my time, and then I got time bank hours for the other half of my time. And of course, those time bank hours weren't worth a lot to me at that point because we didn't have much going on in the time bank. So it was kind of my way of investing in the time bank, and that's what tends to happen everywhere. So you're making that investment because you have faith that you are going to build it into something that is really valuable to you. And in some ways, I think that's really positive because everyone who's doing that has an incentive to make it valuable. And I think that's another reason to offer people time bank hours. Even if it was our idea and we didn't do it, which I think is unfortunate, but at the beginning, we had talked about always, whenever we had paid staff, doing part of it in money and doing part of their time in time bank hours. Not like assigning a dollar equivalent to the time bank hours, but you work half time for money, and the other half time you're working for time bank hours. And I think that can be really good because then everyone has a very concrete incentive to make it valuable for them.
Investment.
Yeah, it's an investment. It's an investment. So what are some of, I want to just take this a different direction. What are some of the things, what do you think your energy auditor wants to use time bank hours for as a human being? Anything. What might they need? Weeding, great. Gardening. What might your Rotary folks want to use the time bank for?
A massage.
Massage.
Spanish lessons.
Or
Spanish lessons. Who could you get the Spanish lessons from that might help you fill your mission in a side doorway?
Spanish teacher.
Yeah. What?
Spanish teacher.
A Spanish teacher? Anyone else they might be able to get Spanish lessons from?
The landscape artists.
Perhaps some of the,
Yeah, the
the
landscaper.
members up above.
Yeah, landscaper. And maybe some of the low-income folks that you are looking to engage are recent immigrants, undocumented immigrants who might be able to give the Spanish lessons.
Might also need to Russian.
Exactly. Spanish speakers, I'm going to put ESL Spanish speakers. And this is another aspect that I think is important because it's very easy, we've all been in a situation where all our stuff is professionalized. The professionals are swamped, right? And they're doing this all the time for their job and they're underfunded and overworked. And these folks who we want this to be for have time and energy and want to build something. And again, if we can engage them from the very beginning to offer their gifts, we are going to be a lot more likely to have them really invest in developing this project because not only are we engaging them and giving them a chance to get to know everybody, we're recognizing that they are very valuable and they help build it then from the beginning. And let's see, have we decided some of the tasks that we're going to carry? So this group has gotten together to figure out what they're going to do. So what's one of the tasks that we might end up doing to reduce our carbon footprint and build a cooperative business around it?
solar panel installs.
Sure, okay. So then the groups might have just decided that we're going to move forward with solar panel installation. Anything else? Is there anything that might be a little easier to do?
Organizing carpools.
Organizing car, oh, that's awesome. Anything else for reducing our carbon footprint? What could we do right away? We could organize carpools right away. We can do solar panels, we'll have to take a little work to get there. What else could we do right away?
We can start a composting program to
Awesome.
keep that out of the landfill.
And it looks like we could probably engage some of the people who've helped us in the gardening. What else might we do?
Sell CFLs.
Okay, sell CFLs, and then that could be a bit of a business venture too.
What's
So
the
CFLs are compact fluorescent light bulbs.
Home energy audits.
Yep, home energy audits. And actually that brings us to right where we started with our project in this way. So we, in Dane County Timebank, we had a person at our utility company who really liked what we helped them with an energy resource fair. So we had Timebank members providing childcare and being greeters at the event and helping get the word out at the events. And these events are for people who've had a hard time paying their energy bill, who are in danger of losing their electricity and gas. So we provided those services at the energy fair, and then the other thing that he really liked about it was we were there signing people up for the Timebank. So they're coming to this fair because they have a problem, and everything else at the fair is focused on their problem and how to set up a payment plan, and there's stuff about how to reduce their energy use, but it's all about the fact that they're not paying their bills. So we were the one thing there that was talking about what they could do and what was good about them and what their assets were. So he really liked how it shifted the dynamic. So he ended up taking it in his own direction, and this is what's worked for us with every project, is someone getting involved in a little way and then getting inspired themselves. So he ended up putting in a proposal where and they did it. He trained 4 women in one of the lowest income neighborhoods in Madison, trained them to go do in-home energy consultations, and then people could request that through the Timebank. So people paid Timebank hours for it, and then they got, and then MG&E tracked the energy use, and all the households reduced their energy by about 10%. And then now we are taking that and going exactly this direction, building a co-op. So now we are training people to go door to door to every house and invite them to have an energy consultation and invite them to participate in the co-op and participate in the Timebank. And then the next step, we will partner with some organizations that do more intensive weatherizing, and we'll use that as an apprenticeship kind of project to help build people's carpentry skills. So the hours that they get trained for, they'll owe back to the community to do those number of hours in the community, but they'll have a new employment skill. And then working towards sometime in 2014 being able to assemble and install solar panels and water heaters. And we'll fund it in a similar way to this West Virginia project that Edgar was talking about, where they build the solar panels and install them. People continue to pay the same amount they were paying on their energy bill, but their bill's been cut in half, so the other half goes to fund the project. And they do that until they own so they sign an agreement that they own the solar panels free and clear after 7 or 8 years. Our situation's a little bit different because we have a lot of renters in the area, so we're partnering with landlords, and we're gonna be working on the advocacy piece, like what Dave mentioned. Actually, this is a big piece for us because we really want to have the co-op be building up the power in the neighborhood to advocate for things that benefit the neighborhood. So one of the things that's early on is we have to get a change in state legislation in order to be able to own solar panels as a co-op. So we'll be working on that. But in the meantime, we'll be looking for the things that we can do without getting the legislative rule change. And one of that is solar water heating. We don't need that rule change for. And the other one is when we partner with landlords in a way that they own the solar panels. And we will be working on the advocacy piece to be sure that some of the savings goes back to the tenants. Because that's going to be a really big deal for us, is we don't want to just do all this work and then have the landlords save and have the tenants continue to pay just as much. So, and then one of the things that emerged from a partnership with one of the first landlords who got enthusiastic about it is they shared that their tenants use way more energy than they need to. So our co-op members are making a video for their tenants, and we'll have a number of their tenants in it. And then each segment will be a little snippet. They're doing this while I'm gone. I'm really glad. each segment will be a little snippet about each thing that you can do. It'll happen in English, and then it'll happen in Spanish. An English speaker from the neighborhood, then a Spanish speaker from the neighborhood. And so they're working on that. That'll be our first good faith contribution to these landlords in support of that partnership.
Please put that on.
We will, no, we put everything on Build for the World, and I handed some things out. That's our project sharing site. I'll hand out more, I don't think everyone's got them. And I would like to encourage all of you to do that too, but I'm posting everything as it's in progress, so you can have all our meeting minutes, and you have our slide presentations that we've given about the project, and just everything as we go. So, and this is a part of the utter conviction that we all need to support each other. I lost track of those. I'll hand them out in a minute because I don't want to derail things for that. One of the things that I wanted to accomplish here with talking about what they would need them for personally is just realizing that if what you do is weed a garden, or if what you do is walk a dog or give a massage, that still is a skill that contributes to your overall mission. It's part of the resource base that contributes to making your world a better place. And that's something that we really just work to convey to our members. Like the person who walks the dog of the person who makes the casserole for the youth court advocate judge is doing a service for restorative justice in the community. So this is a piece to just help think through who you need to accomplish your mission. And we can go now into how we engage these folks.
Yeah, I guess I just want to see if, do we want to take a quick 10-minute break? No, yes. No, okay, well, just the people can feel free to jump out as you need to. I'll put out some more snacks too if anyone wants.
So I'm going to do some stuff with this stakeholder engagement, but first I want to give you guys a chance to talk about the leadership roles, if there's more that you want to discuss. I didn't say much other than give you this sheet, and if people have something in particular that works well for them or something you're struggling with, I don't want to give this short shrift. Some of this will come back up during all the stakeholder engagement stuff too. But anyone have anything vexing about the leadership roles or anything that's been particularly good for you in pulling together a healthy leadership team?
It would help you find out how it is. You said you start recruiting for these other things, like we are now in that farmer stage where all the people that were so fabulous at getting started have dropped out. And there's basically about 3 people left working. So how is it to go about recruiting for the next phase, for the farmer phase?
Well, so I am a big proponent of events of all kinds, and events that will bring in different people or different audiences. So for me, events and projects are the big things. Anything that brings people together face to face. So projects, I think, can really help because you get people who are motivated by something they're already motivated by. And then they can get excited in their own way about the time bank. And then events, we really work to tailor our events to different groups. So we've had rock shows for events, and we've had bingo night for events, and they've been having completely different groups of people attend. Arts and crafts night was extremely successful. We had people setting up at round tables doing crafts with people so you could circulate and make things. We had people with offers for classes and lessons that you could sign up for. And then we had a silent auction where people gave their art and the money went to the time bank. We had people sell their art for time bank hours based on how long it took them to create it. And that was really great. We have a pet parade at the farmer's market every year, and they actually started paying us to run pet parades at the farmer's market now, which is, and all our sustainability totally only comes from projects. We're always scrambling to pay my salary as the director, which is frustrating. We put in a little percentage into each project, but you can only do so much of that. And so, like, the overall time bank is very hard to get funding for, but we get funding for our youth court. Starting with grants and moving into the schools paying for it. The farmers market, like, we provided something of value, and we never thought of that as a revenue stream. They offered to pay us for it. So that's in the county approached us to run a program to provide transportation to rural patients who need to get into the city for dialysis appointments. And we made it clear that in order to do that, it's not just about finding drivers, it's about doing all the recruitment of the whole resource base to make sure those drivers have something valuable to get for their time. So each bit of funding has come from a really mission-oriented piece. But all those projects we help us find people. And then the pet parade, for example, we really encourage the pet sitters to come to the pet parade and meet the pet walkers, meet the pet owners. So any of those events, we also are always leading toward our next steps, which would be the exchanges out in the community. So I think those are really good places to find leadership. And also, I was just talking to the director of the Bay Area Community Exchange, and when we were talking about it, he had the idea of doing a work fair. So like instead of a job fair, a work fair, and invite people into it and have people there with the things that need to happen in the time bank, so you could make it available to your time bank members. Like, I need people to work on this garden project in my neighborhood, but you could also have the time bank make jobs available. We're trying to really imitate a lot of the things that have always happened in the informal economy. So we started making help wanted signs that describe what time banking is and then say what job we need done in that. So all of those things, I mean, it just helps you cast a wider net. And then if you can ask directly for the help you need. And it's also, you might have some of the leadership capabilities right in your time bank and you might not know about it. So it could be reasonable to put up a request for those leadership roles that you're looking for and offer to pay people time bank hours. Sometimes it's safer to do targeted ask to people. So if you've seen someone just show a spark in how they communicate with people or in their organizational abilities, it can be more effective, I think, usually to ask them directly. Because if you just put out the open call, you might have an awkward situation of someone stepping forward that doesn't seem to be equipped for the role. And so that can be an awkward situation. And people are reluctant to sort of identify themselves as having gifts in certain areas, so it can really be useful to ask people to offer their gifts. Any other leadership development stuff? Okay, so I want to talk about engaging stakeholders in organizations and outside of organizations, and just for a time check, if it's okay, so from 2 to 3:30, we have the forum fairly open to tailor to what you want to talk about. Is it all right with you if we start that section at about 2:45 and go into the stakeholder engagement for a bit first? Sure. Okay, because I have a feeling this is what some of you want to talk about anyway. So I just created this little worksheet. You'll see that it's almost a blank page, just to help people work through how to engage different stakeholders and really help people learn from my mistakes that I made early on. What I tended to do at the beginning of the time bank was I would go and talk to people about what it would look like if time banking were fully integrated into every aspect of what they were doing, and it was just a healthy, co-productive little system. And some people really liked that vision, and some people were, didn't resonate with it. Everyone was overwhelmed by it, I think, and it was really impossible to see how to get from here to there. And the other big mistake that I made is we would really try to pull organizations into the time bank. Organizations that were saying, well, we love the idea, but we're already stretched really thin. And we would say, that's okay, this should save you time, ultimately, and we'll help facilitate it, and we'll help be the coordinator for your organization. And neither one of those things worked at all. And now I really advise people, based on my experience, I think if there's not a champion within the organization or a connector who is connected strongly with the organization and with you in the time bank, if there's not those pieces, or there's not one that's sort of coming forward, it's okay to go do a cold meeting with the organization, but if you don't have that person who's like lighting up about it, I would say you might as well wait. And focus on the ones where you do have that. So that's just my experience. Does anyone have a different experience from that? So I don't want to be discouraging, but you might as well not waste your time.
That's exactly how I found it too.
Yeah, and I have never been in a group that said they had a different experience from that. So I just made this worksheet so you could really think through who do you want to recruit, and your mission will determine some of that. Who's really important for you to bring in, and then what's your message going to be to them that's related to their mission. So sometimes I'll have an organization call me and they want me to come and talk to their staff meeting, and I really don't know anything about the organization. I look them up before I go, so I have a sense of how I can, talk about how this can help them meet their mission. And then who's the champion or connector that's going to help carry out the work. And then this piece has been really essential for us. One asset that they might have and one need that they might have. And you might be able to anticipate those, or you might need to ask. And you might need to offer, what are some needs that you can fill, or what's some asset. A lot of organizations will have meeting space as an asset that they can provide, and they don't necessarily think about that. Or it might be an organization that supports people with disabilities. They could provide a service by doing workshops with our members about how to better support and integrate people with disabilities. So there's some assets that they might not necessarily think about that you can brainstorm about before you go. And then one need, and one thing that's really common, one thing that I do with human service organizations is talk about, there are a lot of things that your licensed workers, like a licensed social worker, that your licensed social workers will end up spending a lot of time on that they don't need to be a licensed social worker for, like taking people out to community events, providing the transportation, or doing the companionship stuff. A lot of times people are really limited by, like people with disabilities are very limited by what their workers want to be doing. And so a lot of times time making can fill these gaps that people don't even really see as gaps because they're just used to how things are. So like some of those things that really could be decentralized and provide people a much greater diversity of social contacts, those might be some of the needs. One thing that I remind people in organizations about is, it's always, if you make reminder calls for an event, you always have like double the attendance than if you don't, but people never get around to it because it's so time consuming. That's a perfect thing to give out to the time bank. Posting flyers is a perfect thing to have the time bank do. Helping with your web presence or your graphic design might be it, or maybe cleaning up the place that you're working in. So, and then I already described how it worked for us with the person in the utility company, but it's worked that way in a lot of places. But there was one asset and one need. They had a need for help at these energy fairs, and they provided energy conservation kits for us in return to make available to our members. And that blossomed into Charles doing this Power Time energy consulting, and that's blossoming now into developing a whole energy cooperative. So just an example to show how you can lead with dipping a toe in, and that's very helpful. So
Well, it sounds like all this stuff happens at the speed of light. Like there's an event or there's something coming up, and so people are being drawn into the gravity of it, coming in, and you can give them hours. But then at the same time, there's this sort of the bureaucracy of the time bank. They're not a member yet. They have to do this. They have to have a background check. They have to decide if they're going to pay the fee, or we have to decide if we're going to comp the fee, or something like that. So how do you integrate the bureaucracy? It sounds, your concept sounds so fluid. I don't hear anything about the bureaucracy of how you're making that.
Yeah. And just to be clear, nothing ever is happening at the speed of light. But one thing that you mentioned about this leads into the next is actually something that's going to go into with the next piece, which I think it's always essential to know what your next step is. It's always really important if you're having an event to have the next thing lined up that you can invite people to. Or if the event's about getting members, we have our background check is just an online circuit court check and sex offender registry check, so we can do it on the spot. So when we have events that are geared towards signing up a bunch of members, we have coordinators come, and we've taught a bunch of members to be coordinators to sign up new members, and taught them how to do the basic background check. So we'll have a few coordinators come with their laptop, or we'll do it in a place with a computer lab, and we'll sign people up there. We'll leave like a half hour to sort of sign people up as a group. So we will do that together, and if people don't join, they don't join, that's fine. People can participate in the projects whether or not they join. They can just not get time bank hours. Nothing ever happens at the speed that we want it to. And I think that it's really common for time bank organizers to be like me, like just a bit hyperactive and we really want things to go fast, and like accommodating human life speed can be really tricky for all of us. And it was a conversation we had earlier this morning about the ebb and flow. It's just really essential to realize ebb and flow is a natural part, it's a natural rhythm. There's nothing we can do about it, and the more we can embrace it or not be afraid of it or discouraged by it, the better. And we just are fortunate having 8 years under our belts, because one thing that's been really interesting to me, especially I started seeing it about 2 years ago, is people joined the time bank. Some of them never did anything, some of them were active for a while and then laid low, and then a whole bunch of people come back and they just have had life circumstances intervene, or they lost their motivation and regained it. So it's been nice to see that. But I've just had the benefit of having time.
I have another, and that's a bold question. Have you found any particular method for communicating your leadership group or your core group, like other than email? Do you use like a group discussion board or something so that it's kind of all happening?
Not really. We've had discussed listservs, but not much happens over those. So we have a board meeting. Actually, we've switched to every other month, and then we've formed action teams around resource development and in-reach and outreach, we call it, because we really want to focus on reaching into our members and helping them get their needs met, as well as doing outreach. And those are the resource development isn't as active as it needs to be. The in-reach and outreach is active, and we have an events team that call themselves the Queens of Fun, and so they do that. And so the action teams meet on the months that the board doesn't meet, or they meet as needed, and we're not always consistent. We used to have kitchen cabinet. We're a county-wide time bank, but we thought we wanted a kitchen cabinet, sort of informal steering team for every neighborhood. The thing that we found is the kitchen cabinets that had a job to do continued doing stuff. Like there's a store in Allied Drive, so they stayed active. Other kitchen cabinets that were just about getting time bank activity in their neighborhoods have fallen away, and we don't worry about that anymore. We don't want people to meet for the sake of meeting, and I'm not saying that we're necessarily right to not worry about it, but there's no point worrying about it. And we're all kind of in toddlerhood with time banking overall, and I just think it's really important to realize we're just going to have to learn a lot of this through trial and error, and that's why we really want people to share your stuff as you go. See, and we learn at least as much through the error part as the trial part. So.
You use an example of a pretty issue-oriented mission exercise. I'd always thought of time banking in the generic sense of simply exchanging hours. But did you pick that example as a way to really get time banks to blossom, or that just was an interesting exercise you guys thinking about how to do that?
I think it really helps time banks blossom. I think that not a lot of people are motivated just by the exchanges. Some people are, and we have them, or we don't always have them right away, and then people tend to get in like a year in and see things stagnate because, for a lot of different reasons. So that's where I think, so one of the projects that we did this year was a gardening project where people went and helped plant each other's gardens. So it can be something that's that's your group of people who came together because they wanted to do exchanges and build community, and then find out what else they're motivated by, and that can really help spin the flow in new directions. So that's just my opinion and my experience, but yeah, I think it's helped us a lot.
You're talking repeatedly about going into organizations. What do you go into organizations with? What do you have to offer them?
Actually.
And what are you talking about when you say an organization?
So for us, I should maybe pull some, well, I don't know how easy it is. I'll pull something up on my computer and just tell you what it says. So in our annual reports, and again, you can access these at danecountytimebank.org. And we have a variety of organizations. So we have a number of human service organizations. We have a martial arts center, so people can take classes, and then they've used the time bank to get cleaning help. We have meditation centers. We have schools. We have parent-teacher organizations. So one of the PTOs around an elementary school had a Time Bank member come and teach the kids how to do gardening, and they built some community gardens around their school. So that was one of the things that we provided to them. So organizations, I'm going to pull this up one sec. So, and again, like MG&E, the thing that we could provide to them, oops, wrong one. How'd that happen? But the things that organizations provide, I mean, first of all, a lot of them pay out time bank hours to their members to do the things that they need to do. I don't know why this, oh, I see, here we go. This will help. Okay. I can actually pass this around if people want to see it, but this has, so the Time Bank has helped organizations to transport participants, provide childcare at events, increase visibility and awareness about the organization. So we'll do outreach for organizations, implement additional programming. So like the school that was able to bring it, the school that we brought a youth court in, their staff, we would pay time bank hours to their staff for the help that they provided, and a lot of them just gave them to the school. They brought in yoga, they brought in a mentor for students who weren't in the youth court, so it can increase, implement additional programming. We've helped with fundraising and designing promotional materials. So actually another school would have Time Bank members go and do, there's this thing that you do at the football stadium where you replace seat backs and you get money for it, or you can go sell stuff and get money for it, and they would use Time Bank hours and Time Bank members to do a lot more of that. Clean, paint, and repair facilities. We had a center for dance and movement therapy, and they earned hours by taking some of the youth court kids and providing dance movement therapy, and they all, that was a very good fit. And then people scraped and painted and cleaned their place. Providing help at home and companionship to clients, so that would be more of the organizations that support people with disabilities. Landscape and maintain building grounds, answer phones, file and prepare documents. So we had a community land trust that was wanting people to come help do scanning of documents for them at one point. Staffing and organizing events, and networking with other organizations are some of the things.
So I think I've been thinking the opposite. Rather than getting organizations, folks, staff to join the Time Bank and then get hours for what they do, or volunteers, we provide services that we can provide for them, and we give our members the hours.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, and that's a fine approach, and maybe a different thing that would take some of the burden off your leadership would be to have your members do stuff directly with the organizations. One of the selling points we make with organizations is it can help them become more integrated with their surrounding community. It can help their neighbors really know what it is they do and become invested in a different way. So it's really, I mean, it's really what you and your membership want to do and what you're capable of doing. Maybe you don't have members who wish to do that, or who you feel, you know, would follow through or something like that. But I would say anytime there's an opportunity to push leadership and ownership out into the membership, it's a valuable thing to do.
And when you were starting, when you were like a lot of us, and you didn't have a ton of members who could necessarily show up, how did you not what did you offer at that time?
Well, so a good early example was one of our members did commit to going and cleaning the furniture of our first organizational member, and then she just wasn't capable of it. She wasn't in good health, and she got tired and had to leave really fast. So I went and did it, and that's something that you just need to be willing to do sometimes. So that's and it was really important for me to go do that, so they would have confidence
in the time bank. So that's one of the things, one of the burdens we take on as coordinators. Yeah, and that's another thing though, is managing expectations and being careful not to overpromise. At the beginning of the time bank, I would ask people, how many hours a week or a month do you want to do time bank activities? And then I remember someone said he wanted to do 80 hours a month of time bank activities, and even that sounded high to me at the time. It's like, I don't think we're going to have anything like that. But it started so much slower than that, so I had set people up to perceive failure. So, I mean, that's just another thing, is I just think it's really important to be really clear. And at orientations now, we say, this is a group of 2,000 individual human beings, and they have all the same diversity of habits and how they get back to people, or diversity in, what kind of form of communication they get and respond to. So we really encourage, we set up guidelines and try to set a tone of being very reliable and responsive, but it's just not always going to happen that way. So we encourage people, I don't say it's just not always going to happen that way. Don't frame it negatively, but just say, with all the diversity that implies. And so we do ask you to get back to people right away. If you can't do a service, just say you can't do it. And if you do have an experience that's different from that, just let us know. So, and then we have a member guidebook, and we have a disclaimer thing on our application that says, I understand that people offer neighborly services and don't guarantee their work, and all our stuff's online again. So I wanted to do a little practice of how we engage organizations, if we're ready for that, and then we'll take a break after this. So I'm guessing that most of you here have done an elevator pitch at some point. So does anyone want to, someone could share an elevator pitch, or we could just start talking about the elements that are important to include. Does anyone want to share one? Okay. And I'm sorry, can you just introduce yourself, because we missed you before?
My name is Carrie. I'm from Vashon Time Bank.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks for being here. So I only singled you out because everyone else had introduced themselves before. So what's important to include in an elevator pitch? Does everyone know what that means, elevator pitch? So you're pretending you're getting on an elevator with someone and you're going a few floors and you want to convey something to them during that amount of time. So it's really just a short little pitch about what it is you're doing. So what do they need to know?
Who you are, what's the concept?
Okay. So what is the time bank? What else?
Why is it a good thing?
Why is it a good thing? What else?
All of us have talents and all of us have needs.
What else?
Why it's important to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Why it's important to them. What else?
Building community 1 hour at a time.
Great. And I'm going to put that under why is it good.
And how they can get involved.
Yeah.
Great. How they can get involved, next step. Does anyone want to share what tends to work for you in conveying what the time bank is or why it's good?
We offer, our time bank offers, we have 2 people that offer massages. That does it every time.
An example.
Rather than, it's neighbor helping neighbor.
That's great. An example. And I'm just going to extrapolate to that to say example. And a massage is a nice one because it has a lot of appeal. Any other insights about examples?
The barn raising, the modern barn raising. Barn raising seems to be a part of our American heritage that we all like to know.
Aspire to. Never been involved with before.
Right.
I think that we should have been.
Sounds really cool.
We all saw that movie.
7 brothers, 7 brothers.
Great. How might you identify why it's important to them?
Ask about them.
Yeah, that's great. You can ask them questions. If you don't have time to ask them questions, I usually say the thing that people care most about is what they're passionate about. The second best thing is to go to what you're passionate about. So if you can't readily discern why it's important to them, talk about why it's important to you and how they can get involved. And that's really important. It's easy for people to forget that next step. Do you have any tape?
Yes.
Actually, can I enlist you to do a little job? Here. Hopefully there are enough of these. Can you put a loop of tape on the back, in the middle of the back of those? Just right in the middle. Okay. So, and whoever took a creative writing class? Anyone? You remember show, don't tell? It's really common for people to say, the time bank is an exchange system, and what happens is we do things and we get credit for our service, and then we can spend that credit with someone else. And I'd like to invite you to a potluck. Is that exciting? So you could say, I taught a piano lesson and I could get a massage from a totally different member. I think it's really important when you use the examples to give examples that show it's a network of people. It's not like I do something for you and you do something for me. And then talk about what it is that really excites you about it. So why it's important to them and you. It's kind of the same thing as what's good about it. Recognizes we all have talents and needs, and then what do you invite them to? So would someone like to give a very brief elevator pitch, please? No one?
Carrie's about to, I can see it.
All right.
I was trying hard not to make eye contact with anybody. Thanks, mentor.
If you...
what is a time bank? A time bank is a mechanism to facilitate trades. You teach my child French, and somebody else, and then you cash in that credit for a massage. And well, it's traded differently for an organization, but and through this we just build up sort of an inventory of all of our assets. We learn a lot more about each other, and we knit our community together. I haven't met anybody who didn't surprise me with their assets and talents. It's fascinating to talk to people, and our monthly meetings are a chance to, do skill trades and exchange that kind of information. It's lots of fun, and you'll just love being part of it. So get involved, come to our next potluck.
Now, could you go and stick one of those on each person's forehead, and that'll let them see what it is. And I'm going to have you pair up, and you're going to do an elevator pitch to each other. Here, I'll start sticking. You do an elevator pitch to the other person, and they are going to try to guess what their role is. If anyone really doesn't want something on their forehead, we'll figure something else out for you.
Isn't this where about 2:45 where other topics submitted by Q&A that we're going to?
Apparently not.
Yeah.
Apparently not, huh?
I'd really rather skip this part.
So we do an elevator pitch to for what the other person is.
It's okay?
Yes, for what their role is, and you're going to try to have it so they can guess what their role is. So you're really trying to do a targeted pitch to them. So just turn to the person sitting closest to you. So I think it'll be okay. Give it away. All right, let's see. What do we have? Two. You want to choose? Yeah.
Dave?
All right. So you two, and then you two. That's perfect for you. And then you two. All right. You need one then. Where's the? Oh, are we on? All right. Great. I'll give you one.
Okay. Are you going to talk about what time banking is, or do we need to do that part? I think we don't need to do that part. I love it. Okay.
You already know. I've already said.
Okay. All right.
I have 4 children who are who could use an extra bit of support. They're our siblings, and I get to have services that could help this family. I am a trucker. And so my office
Would that be helpful?
Yeah. So if you're interested, yeah, we can times for you to join. Just a great idea. And
So
what use provides
When you have ebb and flow,
so tell me the age of and their parents are going through divorce.
actually their parents are proceeding board have been demonstrated and kids are
Building a contract.
maybe the same thing.
So there's some sort of child.
And so in that way, I mean,
It's to help with the integration.
Down to chiropractor.
You probably help us find some who can help maybe mentor each other.
You get a prize for the best one, yes?
Yes.
I am a CASA volunteer.
Really close. That's good. Family support, not talking.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Okay, for some reason I thought it was an attorney to help with the divorce. So I have a daughter who wants to,
A lot of traffic and actually,
she's got a lot of friends that are trying vegetarian.
All right, here we go.
This is a kid who really needs a lot of protein.
and so we have
Exactly.
Probably the tallest in her class, and she's probably the thinnest in her class. So I want to make sure that,
Do you think she should get some nutritional counseling?
yes, or some help with how, what would she be able to, what would be a well-rounded, what are the kinds of vegetarian type things that would work well for her, so that she stays healthy and she
So
doesn't.
design, menu planning,
and like she said,
food preparation, shopping.
And you went to school for this. You work in hospitals, you are.
I'm a dietitian.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, that's 3 phases.
And so working
And I
together.
specialize in kids with diabetes and metabolism disorders.
Diabetes, so yeah. So you happen to be.
Yeah, I happen to.
So cool.
Actually, I had to stand up to these
This is a cute idea.
dietitians when my daughter was diagnosed. She was
Joanne gave me
19 months old, and I was still breastfeeding. I was breastfeeding.
Type 1 at 19 months old.
And we were
How old is she
hoping
now?
she's now 16.
And she's healthy.
She's doing really well.
Yeah, and when she's
She will find the route. She will actually get on it's too hard for her mom. But
islet salt.
Is everyone done?
doesn't sound
That
like
it's
what's the direction she would.
All right, everyone's finished.
very.
That was really fun.
That was.
All right, so who guessed? Who guessed?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Can you all share what it was that helped you guess? So say what your role was and what.
Okay, so let's see. Well, she asked for, she represented someone, her daughter, who was, so my role was a dietitian, but I didn't know it yet. She said that her daughter wanted to become a vegetarian like her friends, but she was the tallest person in her class and a little on the thin side, and there was a need. And she also said I had gone to school to be proficient in this. So
Great. Who else wants to share how you guessed?
Well, I guess 6 different things. My role was a family support nonprofit director, but I at first thought I was an attorney, which is yahoo! I'm finally an attorney. But I eventually got around to it from her description of children, her grandchildren, who are her grandchildren, or something like some kids whose parents were the divorce is finalized, but they're really starting to act out. They're having some challenges and they need help with different things. So I came up with probably 5 words that mean this.
Great.
I just never said this, but it was close enough.
It was the personal. It was, here's a person or a group of people, here's their need, and this is something that you can do.
Great. Anyone else want to share? Anyone's had a really hard time with it? A hard time guessing or a hard time tailoring it? Do you want to share your experience?
I am socially inept to a great extent. I deal with anxiety, so this sort of thing just does not work for me. And as an introvert, and I find lots of introverts on time things, this is something that I really like to see as parents. The comfort level that I experience is way different. And yet, I love it.
Do you do outreach in the time bank at all, or do you steer clear?
Yeah.
And yes, this has come up one other time, and so I apologize for pushing you so far out of your comfort zone. And one of the things that I think as time bank coordinators and outreach people, and in a lot of circumstances, the more we get outside of our comfort zone, the more it grows a little bit. And being a time bank organizer just absolutely requires talking to people. And so I do apologize for pushing you that far out of your comfort zone, and I know that it's just it can be silly to have everything taped on your forehead, but I appreciate you sharing that. And does it help a little bit to practice it? I mean, I guess it's
It does. It does. I'm out of practice. I needed to take a break, so I've been on break for a couple of months. So it's the first thing I've done in like 3 months of illness.
Oh, okay. And one of the things for me that is really helpful is just like stumbling through it among friends.
Yes.
Before you have to go stumble through it with people you don't yet know. And did you guess yours, or was that?
I guessed mine because
Great.
she was able to actually, Jennifer was actually able to do some role playing.
Oh, good.
I couldn't get into it to help Jennifer.
Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And also, I'm happy to hear ideas later about if there are ways that can be more palatable for people who are introverted doing these kind of things. But yes, I recognize that I don't like practicing my elevator pitch on anybody myself. Anyone else want to share your
Can you give us your elevator pitch? Is there a generic one that when
yeah,
you don't know that much about somebody you're talking to? Maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it would be, I would just say, first I would start about, do you know about time banking already? And if they don't, I'm going to say it's a mutual credit system. We get together in a network of people and individuals who extend credit to each other. Every hour I spend helping someone else, I get an hour in my account, and I can use that for help from anyone else. So I teach piano lessons, and then next month I can have someone come over and fix my computer, or I have people shop for me, do my grocery shopping because it helps me eat better. The real power of it is it really gives us a chance to connect and meet people that we wouldn't otherwise meet, and really we use our community. And then in our time bank, we use all of those assets that we suddenly know about in our community to be a resource base to do projects. So we run a youth court restorative justice project. We have a wellness project. And it's really pretty much a tool so anybody can hire their neighbors to realize their dreams. And what we're doing next is we're going to have a meeting about developing an energy project in the Allied Drive neighborhood, and it'd be wonderful if you want to come. Can I give you information about it? Anyone else want to share what it was that helped you guess, or did anyone try anything new that you hadn't done during this exercise? Did anyone have an insight about ways to improve on what you already do in your elevator pitch?
The next step, you know, how to get them involved. How would you get them involved?
Yeah. That's a good one. So how about if we take a break and then we can come back and we can just have an open discussion about whatever it is you guys want to focus on. If we have a couple different focus areas, we can split into different tables to dive into those things. Does that sound okay? So, and I also, before I forget, want to mention, I'm on a tour, which is a Dream World Sharing Economy tour. It's called Dream World because I put out a new record recently called Dream World, and I also feel like it's an appropriate name for the Sharing Economy tour. So I've been traveling I'll be traveling a total of a little over 3 months, with like 2-3 weeks stints at home in between. But I did the first month in Europe, going to the UK, doing presentations and discussions. So I met with people at New Economics Foundation and people around the Rushy Green Time Bank. A lot of it's just about creating space for people doing similar work to come together. So we've been inviting also people who do transition town stuff and local currencies. And we presented, the reason I went to Europe is we presented a paper at a conference in The Hague, the International Complementary Currencies Conference. And that was all on behalf of Time for the World, which is a project we started in 2009. I kind of consider us like, here's Dane County Time Bank, and we're all very excited about the potential we see there, but we also see the limitations and how we do stuff. And then Time for the World is like the scouts that go out into the world and learn what else is happening and then really try to apply ourselves to figuring out how to make it flow better. And actually that mutual aid network thing on the back of these, on one side it's build and the other side has no title because I just made it really quick on the fly. It's a conclusion that we've come to about how we piece some of these things together. So we are going to create a cooperative structure that has principles of governing the commons and then uses time banking and price-oriented mutual credits that operate similar to time banking, that things are priced and taxed, so you can use it in businesses. And then also some cooperative saving and lending and investment models, so we can piece together appropriate compensation for all kinds of work and really start to integrate. So it's been my view for a while that we kind of have all the links that we need among all these different practices and models that people have been developing over time, and what's missing is the linking. So we are really going to work on linking these. We consider all these things to really work best if they form sort of a healthy ecosystem, and in order to do that, I think we have to just be more deliberate about the flows back and forth and really understanding how, really integrating so it's not like two people work for money to run the time bank, everyone else doing the work of the time bank is earning time bank hours. We're really gonna work on integrating these things. So the energy co-op that we're building in Allied Drive, we expect to be a sort of a test project for that. So we think of time banking as very appropriate for things that are infinitely abundant, like creativity and caregiving and civic engagement and community building. And then money can be good for things that are scarce. It makes sense to have something scarce and competitive for things that are scarce, that in a proper circumstance, competing for these scarce things would help the best candidate to get them. I know that it doesn't always happen that way in real life. And then something in between, like this price-based mutual credit for things like local businesses, where local businesses and small businesses are at such a disadvantage because the larger ones have all these economies of scale. So if we start using mutual credit and paying the taxes on it, that gives us more liquidity. So I can pay $1,000 for a cooler from your business without having to take out a loan from a bank that's at interest. I pay that $1,000 of credit back through goods and services to other members of the network, but we pay the taxes on it appropriately, so we don't have to be afraid of doing certain activities because of IRS issues. So this is all in very early stages of development, and you can follow it at some of the links that I give on these sheets.
When you say cooperative, do you mean the formal co-op governance structure itself with the governance in place? Okay.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, so we will be trying to incorporate fairly soon, actually. I'm trying to work this out well enough. We just met with people from Sustainable Economies Law Center to learn about more of the details that we have to delve into, and RSF Social Finance, and there are people, we have excellent co-op law and precedent in Wisconsin, so there's someone at UW Center on co-ops that we can tap for help with this, but we're really going to work to knit the pieces together, and the whole goal is good work, giving people the opportunity to do good work, so you don't have to do some crappy 40-hour-a-week job to sustain yourself. Maybe you could cut that down to 20 hours a week, and someone else can have a job for 20 hours a week, and you're piecing together these other forms of work and other forms of compensation to have a good quality of life. So that's what we're working on doing, providing some security for people to be able to do the work that they want in the world, and to incentivize people to cooperate to do that.
We were talking about this earlier, about the kind of relationship between the mutual exchange credit types of things that are taxable. So do you envision any way of crossing those two systems?
Only in a social way, because we don't want to make it so you just trade your time bank hours for dollar-denominated hours. But we have talked about how the co-op itself, how like a whatever size co-op you're operating in is owning all these tools. How the co-op itself, if someone really only has access to time bank hours, which isn't common, but it happens sometimes, if someone really only has access to time bank hours but needs a refrigerator, we figure that out in a cooperative way rather than just like trading time bank hours for a refrigerator. Like maybe they have certain, standing because they participated in the time bank for so long. But I expect and plan for it to be an outright mission of this cooperative that we take care of each other, make sure that everyone's taken care of. So part of that will mean figuring out a way to meet the person's need for a refrigerator, even if they don't have a way to get a hold of dollars. But that's what we're looking at is social constructs around that rather than a mechanism of exchange. So what I'm expecting, but it's all again in very early stages, what I'm expecting is we'll form a co-op that's an umbrella, and then the nonprofit Dane County Time Bank will continue to be nonprofit Dane County Time Bank that will be a part of that co-op, and then the mutual credit piece and the cooperative saving and lending piece. So that's all the kind of stuff we need to work out. But and that's, we're writing about it now. So this, the thing that I handed out is a little bit of writing about it, and we're working on just writing up all the details and then writing up all the questions that need to be answered about the different pieces, and then really starting on it in earnest. What I'm really hoping to do is there's some brownfield remediation work that needs to be done in Madison, and there happens to be one in my neighborhood, and there happens to be one in Adeline Drive where we're working on this energy co-op. And what I would love to do is be ready to put in a proposal to do that in a way that it's a homegrown cooperative effort, really deciding, the neighborhood itself deciding how to approach it and being able to be really thorough, like dealing with the wellness implications of living in a brownfield and dealing with remediation and also dealing with real community-directed economic and community development, identifying what the neighborhood lacks and wants to have, instead of just having developers submit proposals, which is the standard. So we are going to make every effort to be ready to submit a proposal for that, and then it would be wonderful if we actually got accepted, but even if we don't, going through the exercise and making that detailed of a proposal that would get us really far.
I don't want to take us off track, but do you know about, there's a federal program around brownfields and renewable energy, that there's some grants associated with that?
Great. It's great. So how about if we just go around and hear from you? You're welcome to pass if you want to, but I'd like to hear from everyone what you if you have pressing questions still, or what you want to spend the rest of the next hour discussing among us, if you have ideas. And you're welcome to pass, or if you just want to say something that you've learned, you're welcome to also. Do you want to start, Dave?
No, let's go ahead and start.
Okay. Who wants to start?
I'll start. I don't have anything pressing that I want to discuss, but I want to thank you for bringing out some ideas that have been kind of percolating in our time bank and that we haven't fully developed yet. But one of them is project development, and we have sort of just taken baby steps into this by getting involved with organizations and helping them do their projects. We have one coming up in early September where it's a festival in our local community, and it's all about igniting creativity in the community. It's an arts festival, but an arts festival of a different sort, and it's completely volunteer driven, which is what attracted me to it. And so I know the organizer of it, and I said, well, what if the time bank helps staff this? Because there's a lot of volunteer participation. So that is actually going well. There's a lot of interest, and we're targeting certain members that you've gotten to know, and you know what skills they have, even if they're not offering them. And people are excited about that. So, but what you said today about developing kind of internal projects is something we hadn't really talked about. So that's very helpful to start thinking in those terms.
Great.
The other thing is kind of related, but targeting fundraising. for projects or different aspects of what you want to accomplish in the time bank. And because our approach so far has just been sort of handout, asking, in general for money. And I think that approach is going to be very helpful. So I just wanted to share that.
Now,
Great.
question on that. That builds community, but it doesn't gain you a member that's going to provide things to your time bank.
In the organization?
As the organization, the festival. Is there a way to make that happen?
Well, the festival we are thinking of as kind of an organizational member. And
Okay.
it's a kind of a sort of baby step into this area for us because we're pretty new at this. So it's kind of a pilot in a way of thinking about how does this work. And I appreciate what you said earlier about not overcommitting because, we don't have the capacity to do everything we need to for that festival, but we're going to help with it.
And I appreciate that.
And then we're more recognized in the community. We will be identifiable as swell time bank volunteers at the event. So.
But from what you're taking on as a baby step in a more mature organization, have you seen how you then, those matches where you give and get for your organization, you're able to provide your members with, other than just volunteer opportunities, you're able to in fact give them something to.
Yeah, well, and one thing that I wanted to say is one thing that you are getting here too is a lot of learning about how to carry out a project and a lot of sort of experience and members getting a chance to plug in and get to know each other. But an example, it didn't happen this year. We were fiscal sponsor for a thing called Make Music Medicine, and what we wanted to have was for them to join the time bank and pay their volunteers also in time bank hours, and they said they'll do that next year. But the thing that we did get commitments for is being able to do time banking outreach at the event because it's about making music out in the community. So it's a good way to connect potential teachers and potential students. So that can be one, is the outreach they provide. Or our local community supported radio station is a member, and they'll just take time bank stuff out when they do outreach tables themselves. So they do that for us. So those are some things that they do for us.
Do they give you airtime?
Oh yeah, they do a lot. Yeah, they do a lot. We don't pay hours for it, they just do. Yeah, it's very nice. Great, that's really helpful.
I think you guys were talking about the idea of the time bank being just a service organization, and that's okay, right? I mean, without trying to advertise yourself or anything, just you find a project and do it, and you got people to do it with you. That's okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I think it's as much or as little as you need it to be individually.
Yeah, that's a really good point. As much or as little as you need it to be. And that also fits with the ebb and flow of people taking a break from it because doesn't fit with their life at the moment. Any other things that people want to talk about? Just keep going around the circle, Cindy?
Nothing specific.
Ways to keep up enthusiasm so that you actually have people who will work with you. You have a group of people who run the time bank and a group of people who work on projects for the time bank.
So ways to keep up enthusiasm. All right, so I'm going to put that here, and then we'll come back to that after we go around the circle. Circles.
It's just been really helpful to get ideas of what other things are doing, and also to find out that there are sites where I look at a lot of different sites, but this is just such a different level of being able to get ideas for projects. So that was worth the whole day. It was really, really helpful. And I don't have any specific further examples.
Okay.
I think we've heard a lot of interesting and inspiring stuff today, but I want to get down in the weeds for a second and talk about money.
Okay.
As a board member, we're struggling with trying to keep the organization financially sustainable. I'd love to get your thoughts on membership, ideas like membership fees or special events or both. Or we don't need a lot of money, but we need some.
And how much do you need and what's it for?
For our
Coordinator.
our staff.
Okay, for paying your director. Is it, how many hours a week? What's the full-time equivalency?
I think right now, we're thinking we like 20 hours. I don't know.
Once we're part of TOPS, I think 5 to 10
Oh,
becomes
yeah.
much more realistic.
Okay, so I'll just put 5 to 20 hours a week. All right, we will come back to that. We'll come back to both these. Okay.
I would love this opportunity to, because there's so many different time banks here, to see if there is value to the ones that aren't working with the TOPS now, if that would be something that would be of value. I have no idea. Because there's Bainbridge, there's Swell, there's Island Share. What am I missing? CD, yeah.
Okay, great. And how could it be? How could it be valuable to these? Like when you asked that, I was doing my automatic need and asset mapping. Well, perhaps TOPS could be helpful in injecting, helping to do the events and carry out things that help build the enthusiasm. So everyone doesn't have to have their own events team if there are people who are really into doing that or something like that.
Well, I was really caught by surprise about all the talk about projects that you're doing, and kind of still trying to let that sink in and figure out what that would look like for us. I think that we might start out with like a Skillshare type of project or event, and just wondering, did you do Skillshare at Dean as a standalone type activity, or do you know anybody out there in the country that we could connect with as a mentor on that?
So can you just say what you mean by Skillshare?
Well, an event that would bring together people to both demonstrate skills and identify themselves as having these skills they can teach, and probably a significant proportion would just be people who are wandering around taking it all in and just there to learn. So it's learners and teachers.
Yeah, so the arts and crafts night and pet parade, and we had a bike fix it events, and have
They've been
planning
very
time where we
specific
pair
to a certain
events,
type of skill. Okay.
wellness fairs. Yeah, we generally just do a theme for each one, but a broad Skillshare would be fine.
Okay.
And it's kind of, and actually that work fair thing that I talked with the Bay Area Community Exchange guy about is a little bit different. It's like offering work to people and having them come around and look at it. But yeah, I think all of those things could be really excellent and easier to get your brain around to start than starting up a project like out into the community, and a very excellent way to build membership and enthusiasm.
Arroyo Seco does a repair.
Those are really popular everywhere.
Who does that?
Arroyo Seco down in LA. They have, I guess they have a enough mechanically inclined folks that you bring in your small appliance, you bring in your camera that doesn't work, you bring in this, and they do repairs. And it may come, I can't repair this, but we could use those parts if you're not going to do anything with it. So it goes in. But it's apparently it's a big thing for them, and they have a good base, and you say it's successful.
Yeah, and they do it in a number of places now.
So the nitty-gritty of how that works, are you doing these to the community in general or just to time-bank members? And if you're doing it to community in general, do they pay in time-bank hours that they don't have yet because they aren't members, or do they not pay and you're just doing it as a freebie?
Or you could ask them to pay if they're not Timebank members, and then there's an incentive to become a Timebank member. You could sign them up on the spot, and then it's also a fundraiser. You could do a sliding scale if you want to. Yeah, so you can, not to say the kill, but a friend of mine says, free 2 birds with 1 key. You can
That's a great replacement of ours.
Yes. So don't say.
I'm back to there's probably not an answer to this. I don't know, but there's a metrics person inside me, rarely, but occasionally. But and it does have to do with some sense of a measurement of a healthy time bank. And it just seems to me that the number of members is not necessarily a healthy time bank. There's something about exchanges that begin to build a sense if it's actually doing its mission. Exchanges are, is there a correlation between the health of a time bank, and is there a metric that might be emerging in terms of, the number of members and the number of hours a month exchanged being one kind of metric? And if so, is it like 30% of your members exchanging monthly? Is it 20%? Is it 80%? I mean, I know it's not 80%, but
this is one of the crying needs that we identified at the beginning of Time for the World. And at the beginning, we thought we were going to spend our first year doing research on the existing research and really distilling it. And we found right away there's just not anywhere near enough. And that's one of the reasons we created Build for the World, to really
start capturing,
actively like promote that kind of thing. One of the pieces that we haven't been able to build yet, just because we haven't had the capacity yet, that we're working on developing that with this mutual aid network where we can get people enlisted to do this kind of thing, is we want to pull out some simple data analysis evaluation. Like there's a software called R, I guess, that's simple to use, but we want to sort of push it out in the community and get people to use it themselves and get people to share their data analysis and evaluation. And at the same time, a friend of mine in LA is a qualitative researcher, and so we're gonna try to work it out so she can start doing more qualitative research about time banks. And so it has been our goal to figure out what works best under what local conditions. And I don't think anyone's figured out a metric. There's on the Community Forge software that we use right now, at the bottom, it has a script that automatically says how many members have recorded how many exchanges and how many hours it exchanges. And it's based on this guy Tom Greco's measurements of a healthy system. I don't totally agree with those measurements because they are completely accounting based, and it doesn't take into account at all the fact that people don't record their hours and the circumstances in which that might be ideal. So we want to connect the quantitative and the qualitative, and I would invite you to participate in helping make that happen if you want to. But it is something that a lot of people have identified the need for. It was a big topic at this conference I was at in Europe also. So there are a number of organizations kind of working on it. But some of you might have experienced this. It's really common for established time banks to have researchers come in and spend a lot of time with you and your members, and you might really devote a lot of time to helping them get the information they want, and then you never see any results from it. And so that's sort of a chronic issue too. Like there's all this research being done that we never hear about later. But there are a number of things in the knowledge commons. So there's some stuff to go on, but there's no formula established at all yet. There's some guesses. And yeah, I mean, people doing exchanges, people meeting goals, or like working together on common goals. Those could all be applied toward your metrics, and they are going to tell you more than simple number of members. But it's just so important to keep track of the qualitative outcomes too.
Well, just quantitatively, if you looked at an average at Dane County, I don't know how many members, what would be an average number of hours exchanged a month, for instance?
Well, we've had
that, it's not total, but what is recorded?
About 1,000, and that's among 2,000 some members, and some of our members have never done anything, and some of our members have never reported.
And so that's
anything.
pretty
But
usual.
We have between 10 and 15,000 hours exchanged a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's just something that reminds me, if we have time, it might be interesting. You've used a couple different software packages, right? The Community Weaver and Forge software, and others have used different ones here too. And maybe spending a brief amount of time kind of talking about the different options.
Okay. All right. So
Thank you. No, that was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, anything that you want to be sure to talk about?
Yeah, probably the crossover with perhaps older mentors working with youth, or maybe like young couples or family members.
Especially with the cutbacks.
Yeah, just being able to weave something in to replace what's being taken out of our schools.
No, that'd be fine. We haven't got enough time to do that, so let's.
Okay.
I just had one quick, couple of book recommended reading. I know the speaker on the Skype wrote a book, so if any of you guys have a couple titles to give me.
He's written several books.
Yeah, good stuff, actually.
Throwaway people.
So No More Throwaway People is a really good one.
Yeah.
It's dense.
I really recommend Debt, The First 5,000 Years by David Graeber. That book, I've had my eyes opened a lot over the years, and I didn't know they had that much more to open.
And the author's last name is?
Graeber, Graeber. There are a lot of books by Bernard Lietaer. There are two new ones. There's one called People Money and one called Rethinking Money. The book that I read that got me into all this is really hard to find. It's called The Future of Money. But I would say the more recent books are way more accessible on a physical level and more current. Sacred Economics by Charles Eisenstein is really good, I think. So, do other people have?
Greco?
Yeah, Tom Greco has some books, I think, The End of Money and the Future of Civilization.
You know, there's that one that the founder of Bally wrote, Local Money, Local Sense, or Local Dollars, Local Sense.
Oh, okay.
And then there's also this called Local Money, How to Make It Happen in Your Community. It talks about all the different kinds of parallel currencies, time banking.
Okay, Peter North.
Yeah.
Any others?
Ed Colum is doing some good research out of Maine. He did a book with several other co-authors in 2012, Equal Time, Equal Value, Community Currencies and Time Banking in the U.S. It's good. You'll have to probably go to a university to get it.
So do you have there's Knowledge Commons. I don't know if you could put that on a link to that on your notes, because that's one area we have columns, papers under that. It's a Google Drive that anyone can access, and we're trying to compile resources useful for time banking, and it does have a research piece that has that on.
So Knowledge Commons, is it specific to time banking?
Yes.
It is, okay.
And it's not posted in the place that we can send everyone the link to, but we will. Oh, but you can send the link.
You can send the link, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The link does work. Anyone can be able to access it.
All right. Never mind. So the Knowledge Commons. So we can send out an email to everybody here because we got all your information, and we can put the link to the Knowledge Commons there. Great. So do we want to tackle? Did anyone else have reading lists to check?
I just have one other point that I'd like people to think about. Has anybody ever had an intern to help them
Yes.
with this stuff? I want to explore that at some point, so I'll call you or.
Has anyone else had interns?
Be careful, the rules are changing. Hey.
For interns from a university?
That's on all interns around the nation. There's court cases right now being adjudicated.
Seems good because it's really being exploited way too much. But we appreciated being able to exploit it ourselves. Interns set up our youth court, and we had 2 awesome interns at first. But we've also had situations where we have interns where it creates more work and it doesn't work out as well. So it's just really important to interview the people and not just assume you take any intern who comes and really look for particular skill sets. And if you establish a relationship with the professor or teacher, that can help you get better results from the interns that you get. So we've had very good experiences. Some experiences that just took a lot of time, no really bad experiences, and some experiences that were just fine.
Swell had a wonderful Vista volunteer that really helped getting it going.
Yeah, she actually was with senior services, but helping us.
And one thing I wanted
But
to-
not completely dedicated to swell.
Right. There's also the, if you haven't connected with the Thriving Communities initiative, you can go there. That's .org, Thriving Communities.
Okay. That's on Bainbridge.
Jeff's in Whidbey now.
Whidbey, it is.
Whidbey.
Whidbey Institute.
But it's really, it's a movement that is perfectly supportive of time banking and encourages time banking. And also, the other one, I'll think of it later and let you know. What it is.
Okay. Just one other thing. There's a theologian who passed away. His name is Henry Nouwen, and he was actually a Yale theologian scholar. But I have this little vignette that he wrote on the spirituality of fundraising and our beliefs about money, and when we ask for money, and it's really a call. You're really helping people by this, and so this little thing of spirituality of fundraising. It's a great little piece.
Okay, great. Yeah, there have been times when I felt like I could really do a service by relieving someone of their money.
That's right.
So, how about, should we just jump into this quickly? Because this is sort of a nuts and bolts. We can throw out different ways that we raise money and what we raise money for and how we approach it, and then we can brainstorm a little bit more. I think that this would be helpful, like talking about the mentors with youth and ways to keep up enthusiasm, and some of that might connect with tops. With the question I wanted to ask to close out the day is how we can support each other better. So that might be how. So maybe we'll end with this piece and just let that lead right into how we can support each other better, and then we can do that and wrap up by 4:30. We will wrap up by 4:30. And that's it. We were scheduled till 4:30. I just want to make sure that we were safe there. Okay, so money. How do people raise money? Who charges member fees? Does anybody want to share how that works for you?
Yeah, we haven't, charging a member fee turns out to be an interesting thing because when people first join, Bainbridge Island has a fairly wealthy class and then a very poor class. When people first joined, we got a lot of the members that were quite happy to pay the $25, which is what our membership fee is. None of them have renewed. They are also so busy that they really haven't used the time bank function, so most of them haven't renewed. And the rest of the people on Bainbridge, the ones that are in really poverty situations, we ask them to contribute hours instead of money. And they aren't really using the time bank that much either, but they are still with us, kind of.
No one's busier than a poor person, I can assure you. They're the busiest people, bar none. Just staying alive.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to be a full-time job to
It's
have
beyond.
a disability or
It's
be in
beyond.
poverty or anything. Actually, when we're making what our next project, we just got, fortunately, we rely way too heavily on it, but our main sustenance is contracts for service from government officials or like the school district. But we just got money, again, we get a fair amount through the disabilities system in our county. We just got offered, I just got this opportunity where I don't know enough about the system to describe this well, but individuals with disabilities have a certain budget allocation, and 25 families got together and made a proposal. The county did this whole really interesting process, but these 25 families got together and proposed time bank oriented neighbor care team. I mean, we were part of the process, like letting people know what was possible. So of these 25 families, I think it's like $6,000 per, or if you know, it's $3,000 per family goes into a pot, and $30,000 of that is going to enable us to hire a neighborhood coordinator to set up neighbor care teams. We're modeling it on the Lehigh Valley Care Exchange in Allentown, Pennsylvania. They do neighbor care teams. But I thought of it because what you do is we'll identify people in a neighborhood, like someone will be responsible for transportation. And what that means is they know who offers transportation, they know who needs transportation, they help make the matches, that they might be backup if there's
if something falls through or something, because we have to make sure that people can get the things, their needs met. But we expect to make a paperwork liaison, because there's so much paperwork involved in every aspect of living, but transportation, home care, paperwork, food, that kind of stuff. So we'll make a team of people who are responsible for sort of knowing the needs and assets in the community. But so that's a funding source if you are interested, and you need to be set up in a way, and this is perhaps it could be a function that TOPS fills by being a nonprofit organization and being an agent. It might position you to be able to go for those kind of money if you're a member of TOPS.
Yeah.
There are definitely drawbacks to it, which is all the reporting requirements are somewhat cumbersome, and you have to be meeting the goals that they set out. But overall, it's worked out pretty well for us, I have to say. I mean, there have been a couple that have, so a caveat, just, it's really so important. It's so easy to get pulled around by your funding sources, and it's easy to try to go bigger than you're ready, or to get pulled away from your core mission or something. So we actually had one terrible grant that was just like a nightmare. It just wasn't a good idea for a project at all, and we chased it, took the money, and then we were so sorry that we did. And it's happened a couple times that way, but overall it's worked out really well for us. But it's just really important to know what you're getting into. But that's been a very stable funding source for us until it's not,
That's the key.
Exactly. So all these things are going to create different dynamics and dependencies. But just like every other venture, it's good to have a diversity of funding sources. So we have the member fees. Does anybody else want to report a different experience with member fees than what Vicki did? Anyone where it's working well? Is it covering a good chunk of your expenses?
Well, we're doing member fees in TOPS. The challenge is that we have instances where the direct costs of processing the membership is greater than the member fee.
That's a very, 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 very important point.
Yeah.
How much does it cost to have a member fee?
Yeah.
And sometimes it can really be a problem, and not always. We have organization membership fees, but not individual membership fees. But even with the organizations, we're super lax about it. We should be less lax about it, but we don't want to lose them as members because they don't pay the fee. But we generally do sliding scale, but a couple of years ago we decided to ask every organization to pay $120, the average, equivalent of $10 a month. And a bunch of them did pay it, but some of the organizations that we used to have a sliding scale based on their budget. So some of the ones that used to pay more were paying less because we were asking for 120. We did get a number of people giving 120 who were paying 20 or 30 before, but some people freaked out when they saw the 120, and we've just gone back to direct sliding scale and encourage them to pay, a certain range. But it's such, in my perspective, it's such a drop in the bucket for our actual budget. It doesn't feel worth it to be hard about it. That's just me, and that also reflects like my weaknesses in that area. So I'm not at all saying that's the right approach. It's probably better and more fair and more lucrative, of course, to really make everyone pay it if you're requiring it. But we also make a disclaimer always on everything that no one's turned away because of inability to pay. So I know a couple of years ago our letter said, contact us. If you can't pay the fee, contact us to talk about how we can create value together. Figure out about hours.
Well, that's a good phrase.
Yeah, how to create value together.
Mm-hmm.
No one's turned away was good too. Could you say that again?
Yeah, no one's turned away due to lack of ability to pay. What about events? What's worked well for people? Again, you need to make sure that you're not spending more money or time. Depending on how you want to value the time, it might be a nice team building exercise. It could be a great thing to have people spending tons of time on an event, but it could be easy to pour tons and tons of effort into an event and have a very low net. So do people have good experience with raising money through events?
Ask us in 4 months.
Yeah, we're about to launch one. Yeah.
What's your event going to be?
It's silent. We're going to exchange service hours.
Oh, great.
And an auction.
And material items auction, but.
That's great. A silent auction
And a live,
person?
yeah.
Okay. Oh, do you have to get an auctioneer and a license to do the live auction? You gonna have like a
Yeah, well, no. We're gonna have, a regular person, but
Yeah.
somebody
A
entertaining.
volunteer.
In Wisconsin, we have to have a license to have an auction. And so it's just something to look into. And you also have to be careful with raffles. So just make
Raffles.
sure to look into it. Silent auctions are okay.
Raffles, depending on how high you're going, you do. Under a certain amount, you don't.
We do know we have to get a liquor license because we want
Ah.
to.
It's $10, don't worry.
Oh, okay, that's good. I used to be on our.
But we've got the venue free.
Great.
And everybody on the board and different Time Bank members are donating the food and the alcohol.
Great.
So we should have very little upfront expense.
That actually sounds like it'll be a pretty successful fundraising event. Online auctions have worked pretty well for us, especially partnering with other organizations who want to do it. And we've been just lucky because we've had a couple people who are involved in other organizations, and there's a free service, and I can't think of what it's called, but you can look it up. There's a free service for online auctions, and then you just need to look it up because I don't know what it's called. But then the work is about getting people to contribute things for the auction and then getting the word out.
So we've had a couple of different things that we've done. One is that because I'm a face painter and I have a presence at the farmer's market, I had a jar there where people can just donate directly. They can either pay their membership fee right there on Saturday while they're at the market, or they can just pay for support. And there's other programs I represent as well, so it's just sort of part of what Morgan does, And so people, what they say is they really appreciate the convenience of having it there because it reminds them that this booth is an offering to the community. It's a service. They know that a certain amount of that booth pays my expenses for being there and my intern. That's worked out, with my supervisor, the people I represent to collect donations for. And I also went to the trouble of getting a DUNS number for my business so that I could do that as an independent contractor, not through IleShare. So I can do it for IleShare, but not as, even though, then the money would go into the bank account and then it would come, a portion of it would come back to me. That's how we did it last year. This year, we're doing it this new way. So that's been okay. The main thing is because people like seeing a consistent representation of the agency. So that's meant more than anything in having these simple handouts available. So I always carry something with me so that I can give people either a little card or some little pamphlet or something. So then the other thing is we did a dance in our first couple of months after we got launched. And it really pays to ask your questions. So the hall was only like $25 per hour, which was very doable. We had it for 4 hours. And it was the Odd Fellows, and they said they wanted to organize this for us, and so we got a hold of people, and they brought in goodies. People could make donations for the goodies, and it was a suggested donation of $8 to $10 for the dance, and if they wanted that to go toward their membership, that was totally fine, so we got some that way. But what they didn't tell us was that their disc jockey got 50% of whatever the take was.
Oh.
So they count out this money. There was, about $1,300, $1,400, and we got about 50% of it after experiences, after the expense, after the rental of the hall. So I told them I wouldn't do it under those arrangements again because we did so much more work,
right,
to support that because we provided the food. They just provided the space and the disc jockey, so it was a tough learning.
That's a good learning. I just had that same learning experience. I showed up to do an event, and the place insisted on taking half of everything, including donations. So people made donations to the tour, and they took half of everything. And it was really quite stressful because it's not easy to raise money. So that's helpful. reminder, always communicate as explicitly as possible, but then you just never, sometimes you just can't anticipate some of those things. But those sound like some pretty good, kind of low overhead kind of events. You can plug into other things that are going on. And then all of these kind of events do double duty, because Arts and Crafts Night, you can do the silent auction of artwork, and the Repair Cafe, you can have the non-members pay some money or make a donation. Same with Wellness Fair, a lot of people want to come and get a massage, whether they're members or not, and they're probably willing to put in some money. So you can pay the hours to the people who are doing it, and they know they're doing it as a fundraiser. What about, does anyone have other ways? So the government contracts for us have been the ways to get the more significant like chunks of money at a time. Has anyone found other ways to get like bigger money? Does anyone have good experience with major donors?
Well, we originally got funding from United Way, and then they gave us a second grant. I don't think that the Time Bank could have started without United Way funding. And they still support us, 3 cities still support us, minimally, but because they are invested in believing in what time banking is. They see us as a partner in their city, so we don't have big reporting to have to do or anything. Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah, we actually got on another program, which is great, that so far we've just lost money on it every year. There's another sort of shared giving program in Wisconsin that's wonderful, and we were so excited to be part of it, but it requires an audit, and it's the only reason we have to get an audit. An audit costs more than $3,000 every year, and there's member dues, and you have to put in work hours, and we've never even gotten $3,000 in a year yet, so we're just really trying to figure out how to deal with that. So again, it's just so important to think through what your funding source is getting you and how worthwhile it is. We're sticking it out because we really care about the organization. We really want to make it work, and it's really hard to, it's really hard to make a break right now because we've invested so much in it that it's stressful to us not constantly, but consistently. And then the other thing is just looking for ways to reduce expenses through in-kind. Of course, if you can find a member who, for a while we had a member who had a contract on their copy machine, and it was automatically paid for a certain number of copies every month, so they would do a bunch for us. So there might be things, but I know that you want to pay your staff. Any other insights about money? Sorry, there's no magic bullet. We are hoping very much that this mutual aid network structure, by creating the investment, cooperative saving, lending, investment piece, that could be a pool of money that could help support the infrastructure and administration of the cooperative. But that's, again, at the very beginning. All right, so what about, do people have experience with the mentoring youth or engaging youth? One thing that we're really, so it actually kind of ties in with the software. I know we can touch on the software briefly too, but so Community Weaver is programmed in Drupal. It needs to make an upgrade. We switched to Community Forge, which is also in Drupal. It's in Drupal 7, Community Weaver's in Drupal 6. And Drupal is a pretty easy platform to learn how to use, and it's really in demand. So I have a friend who's a web developer in Madison, and he was telling me he always needs Drupal programmers, and they can charge like $100 to $150 an hour because there aren't enough of them, but it's easy to use. So we are working on building a team of Drupal programmers, and we're starting with young people who have good computer propensity. So that's something that we're just getting going right now. So Mark Bracken is my partner in Time for the World, and Build is in Drupal, and the Mutual Aid Network's in Drupal, and then he's going to start working with the son of our wellness coordinator and some other people who are stepping up. A young man who has a disability who used to be on our board to learn how to do Drupal. So we're going to work on building a team, and so that's a good thing to mentor, to get youth engaged in. And again, I always end up having sort of this project focus, but we haven't done this yet. But in one of the high schools where we have a youth court, there is an apps class, so it's a class about writing apps for software. So what we need to do, then we just have to actually get around to doing it, is bring our youth court kids together with the apps class and have them brainstorm about what would be cool ways that would get them want to use the time bank more, and maybe have them build some apps around it. And we've
as part of the energy project in Allied Drive, as part of the co-op, one of the goals is to have a lot of varied points of entry for a lot of different skill sets and interests and abilities. And so there are 2 teen groups there, one for girls and one for boys, and we want to have them be sort of our resource development team so they can think about the kinds of things they would want to get for their hours and go get them. So they can go approach businesses. We'll teach them how to do the kind of asks, so like movie tickets or bus tickets or all the kinds of things that they would want to do. Have other people engaged youth in ways that have worked out well for you? We don't have tons of young members that are unstructured. Most of our young members are youth court members, but we do have some. We had horseback riding. We've always had horseback riding as an offer, and that's been popular with the kids.
One thing that happened at our last month's potluck was this guy walks in, and our group is, I would say, pretty middle-aged, and he was young, and he looked at us like, oh, am I in the right place? We made sure to welcome him, but he found out about us on Zeitgeist, which is, where young people often go, and I could see our members looking like, and it said for a good time on the east side, go to a East Side Time Bank. So he said, okay, I'll check it out. He brought the soup that he had made too. He did join, but I think that what I'm saying is that we need to reach young people to really participate through things like Zeitgeist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I knew Zeitgeist in the cafe. Is there also some sort of
online?
There's an organization. It's
Okay.
a Zeitgeist organization.
Yeah, I didn't know
It's a
about it.
movement. One of the things that we are working on in West Seattle is to try to engage young families. And we're trying to provide childcare at orientations.
That's good.
And to emphasize that, yeah, we're here and we will do this. And this is a great way to build up a babysitting syndicate. That's a need that all young families have, and we think that there's some mileage in that.
Oh, also, we just, a couple of our members went to distribute flyers about the Time Bank at a kids concert. Kirkland every Tuesday has a kids concert in the summertime. And as a result of that, they needed volunteers, so I put out a request. About 4 or 5 of our folks went down to volunteer. And, I think it was you that said this morning, but, really getting folks young, as a way of supporting the Time Bank. So there probably will be some relationship that's going to happen with the kids concert, maybe babysitting. Yeah, I don't know what.
Do you want to share about the game in the middle school and whatever you want to share?
Well, yeah, there's 2 things I thought of. One is this year I helped initiate the Orcas Youth Conservation Corps. So there's one that's established on Lopez, there's one that's established on San Juan, and then I was approached in December with, what about if it's time for Orcas to have one? So I went ahead and took on the logistics coordination. I banked all my time, and I got a couple people to help, with some of it, and then we just kept having the meetings, and we got the first one off the ground, but we didn't get the funding, and neither did the other 2 who have been established. So we're in the process of trying to figure out if we're gonna go ahead and become one unit, since there is one group that has a nonprofit status as a conservation course. So they're gonna work out some of those details. But what was interesting is when we started meeting with youth, they said only 1 out of 15 youth said the money mattered. So I thought that was important to bring forward. But the challenge is that with all this work that I'd done, my environmental leads who work for the school, they're afraid to put their time. They get a stipend, but they also go above and beyond the time. So it's like they can just throw their time in the time bank, and they're just kind of afraid to even look at it, even though we've talked about it, given them the stuff to look at. So there's a little bit of a hurdle there. But with the middle school kids, what I did over the last year is I went into each of the schools and I just went into the classroom. I had made a real simple PowerPoint of pictures of local kids doing projects and adults for the schools, like a school garden expansion and so forth, and showed them what that time amounted to and how that could be traded in the community. But for them to really get it, what I did is I gave everybody half of a 3x5 card. On one, they put 3 things they would love to do in the community, just for the fun of it, that was of a giving nature. And they did it privately, and then on the other one was 3 things they would like to receive. So then I have one kid stand up in the classroom, and if there's teachers or parents, they participate too. But one person starts off with, well, here's something I would really like, and it could be sailing lessons or horseback riding lessons or learning how to work in wood. So they'll throw that out there. And then everybody, listens to that, and then somebody say, well, actually my uncle knows how to do the woodworking, right? Or so that starts to happen. So the kids start to say, well, I know someone, or I can, or my dad can, or my grandpa can, or my mother. So that starts to happen. Then a few more kids go by, then all of a sudden the teacher was like, oh, wait a minute, you know how to do this? I never knew that. Or you know how to do, and the kids are starting to look at each other in a very different way. And then when it came, but the thing is, the kids were not afraid to ask for what they wanted. And that's the thing I liked so much more about doing that, because in an adult setting, the adults are quicker about what they're willing to give, but they're not so quick about what they want to receive. So
that's great. And that might not work out in high
Kids,
school, but that's the right age group for preteens. Yeah.
That's very cool.
I've been really surprised, though pleasantly surprised, because I was really afraid of working with the high school kids when we started Youth for It, and they've been a pleasure. I've just been really surprised with how open they are to all kinds of stuff. But I'm just writing down here games in a really messy way, because games always, we didn't play it this morning, but we had the yarn game, and the instructions are in here. I really recommend to people when you're engaging with a new group of people talking about what time making is, play this yarn game, do 2 rounds, one where everybody says what they have to offer, and the next one where everybody says what they need, because it really helps people understand the dynamics much more thoroughly, and I think it helps prime people to behave in the time bank in the ways that help it flourish. And then actually I have it with me. We made another goal that we have for Build that we just haven't been able to get to yet, but we plan to make something where there'll be self-organizing projects. So like you could sign up on Build and you could say, I live on Bainbridge Island or wherever. I live in this place. I want to work on urban agriculture. I want to do a project where we turn all the unused space on a block into gardens and say what you have to contribute to it. And then other people in the same area, if they sign up for the same kind of thing, it'll automatically send you an email and tell you, okay, here's what you do, go meet this many people who want to do this, and like really hold your hand through the process, like find a place to meet and do this and that. And one of the things that we created in service to that is a game, it's a board game, where you play as a team, and it's about collaborating to match roles and assets and needs to meet a common goal. And there are barrier cards, so you have to like discuss as a team how to overcome different barriers. But then if you take it farther, then you go do the real life adventure and you do those activities in real life. So we've done it once. We played it in Ally Drive, and then we went and did the real life adventure. And one of the things is a scavenger hunt, so you go door to door, you invite everyone to play or do your next thing. Our next thing was a swap meet, so it's also a thing in the game. But our next thing was a swap meet, so we went door to door. We had the menu of all the things in the time bank, like come to the swap meet. You can contribute these things. We'll have gift certificates that you could make. You can. We made checks of just like super cursory, informal. We just printed checks based on Philadelphia equal dollars design. So you can write a check off your time bank account, and they just come and put that in, and we record it later on the computer, where they could bring stuff to the swap meet. So we went door to door, invited everyone, and then we had a swap meet at the neighborhood picnic a few days later, and it was great. Actually, it was really, really exciting for me because the first door I went to was a Spanish-speaking family, and there were 2 moms and 2 sets of kids there, and the moms didn't speak any English, but the kids came out and they were all excited, and they were translating, and they were the first people to show up at the swap meet, and they brought these little trikes and took home these great stuffed animals, and other kids were super happy to get the trikes, and it was just really nice to have the swap meet. So we started doing that, and it's nice because there's never any net loss off the table, and yeah, so it's just been, and again, it's just another experiential learning thing. But I have the game here that I'm happy to show people, and also all the files are online, so you can download it and print it. But the idea is like, as you play it, you help us improve on the game. And there was another game that I did at a little festival, and it was really popular with the kids. But I just had people,
brought a bunch of potatoes and cut them in half, and then had people carve a potato stand, and then send them out with some ink and a little passbook. And they went and they had to stamp the book for any time someone helped them or they helped someone else, and then come back and tell the story of it. But all those kind of things to like get people in the habit of it. And there are tons of games available. Does anyone else have games or access to games? They're more in the knowledge commons too. Yeah, there are all kinds of cool games that I highly recommend. Anything that gets people moving around. So is that a theory? Sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to know more about Youth Corps. Is that something that exists as an entity by itself that Time Bank is just partnering with, or is it?
No, we started a Time Bank Youth Court, and yeah, it's in a nutshell. It's instead of getting a ticket from the police officer, they give them a restorative justice ticket that was created for our youth court and supported by our city attorney.
Oh, Youth Court.
Court, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So kids getting in trouble come to a jury of their peers and they get sentenced to things in their neighborhood with people.
And the Time Bank started that?
Yeah.
Is that on your website?
Yep, and it's on Build. Everything about it is on Build for the World, and it's on our
Build
website.
for the World.
Yeah, I have that.
But what about Youth Corps?
The Orcas Youth Conservation Corps is based on the adult version of Conservation Corps, but it's designed for young people to teach them service work, service learning, service work, environmental, local environmental protection.
And that is a federal entity, huh?
No, there is one, but it's 18 to 24-year-olds, and ours is 12 to 17-year-olds. So we can sometimes get federal. We do sometimes get federal money because it's filling a need. Fish and Wildlife sometimes provides money. United Way sometimes provides money. Bureau of Land Management has provided some for us, but so the kids work on public lands and lands held in trust. So state parks, national parks, things like that. So they're learning those skills, and then if they're 16 and 17, they actually get credit through school for their hours.
You mean academic credit?
Community service.
Community service credit, and they also, we've had it so they get a stipend, but because we didn't get fully funded, we reduced our program this year from what our original plans were. But the kids said they would be happy to have hours, just to have the hours recorded and have those as trade. So
we need to move on to how to better support each other, including valued connections with TOPS, so we can learn more about what TOPS does provide, and then also just talk about what we all need and see how we meet those needs. Do you guys want to go more into it? So I just mentioned really briefly about Community Forge and Community Weaver. Do you guys want to go to a quick, very brief overview of the different software available, or do you want to just expect to find that information elsewhere later? Who wants to take a minute for software?
I would just like to know, why did you change from Community Weaver?
We just changed because, well, for a couple of reasons, but one is we just really want to be able to mold our software and do different things with it, and it just hasn't been available for that yet. One of the things, because we're connecting these other pieces, one of the important pieces to us is we are starting that price-based mutual credit piece, and Community Forge is capable of doing that, and just the way it's built and released meets our needs better because we can take control and do different things with it. And then we'll be doing other things in Drupal too, because we've been very interested for a long time in starting with a completely stripped down version of time-making software that eliminates all the preconceived notions of how you structure yourselves. And that's a reflection of our view that we really need to play around and innovate in order to find ways to make this into something that sort of flows on its own. So it just meets our particular needs. And one of the things that we were able to do, because we had control, is we have our balances showing as two bar graphs going up that say given and gotten, so you don't have to have a negative balance. And it's just, yeah, there are aspects of it that are simpler in how it was built. So it's easier for us to do, and it's released openly. Which if Community Weaver had been built in a simpler way, it probably would have been released openly by now. Also, but that's not the case. So,
But you had some Drupal or access to Drupal programmers to
Yeah,
teams.
we wouldn't have to though, because Community Forge also, you can just have it hosted on their server and have them deal with it for you. But we want to be able to play with it.
So the software you're using now kind of lends itself better to the kind of developing projects that are companions to the time bank.
It can. It lends itself better for us to be able to make it lend itself better to developing projects.
Yeah.
Know what I mean? So we wouldn't be able to take Community Weaver and do these other things with it very easily.
And they're extending into a more robust alternative currency areas. I
For
think
just
that's
time
very good.
banking, doing just time banking, Community Weaver is great. If your goal is time banking and you're not going off and doing all these other things.
Yeah. So it just really depends on what your needs are. And then you're using time and talents. Do you want to describe?
Well, it has been mostly done by a single programmer, and when we first started using it, he was changing it often, and it was changing in odd directions, and it could be very tricky, but he is now working with a team, and they seem to have a lot more goals set in mind before they start, and it's been stable, and it's getting better all the time, and they're now talking about releasing going live with the software that allows us to exchange hours between the various time and talents time banks, which is something that I've been praying for. So we're liking it now. It's getting better all the time. It's free.
And then there's also an effort underway through Knit Network to get all these different programmers to work with each other so we can make APIs, which would be an interface for the softwares in general to be able to exchange with each other and exchange information. It's not an easy task, and I'm not sure exactly if and when it will come to fruition, but it is something that's underway kind of around the world. A lot of people are identifying the same kind of desire. There's there's OS Currency, which is on Ruby on Rails, and Bay Area Community Exchange uses that. It's another open source platform. There is, what was the other one I was going to mention? OS Currency. Oh, CES, Community Exchange Systems, and that was built in South Africa, and it's being used all over the world. That developer is looking for funding to support moving that into Drupal or into the open source world. It's not. It's also one programmer and would like to update it. So I think a lot of people are sort of in the same boat where everyone wants to take leaps forward with the software they're doing, and everyone's stretched for money and all this stuff. So that's another aspect of the network that I think is important, and the mutual aid network that we're working to build is I would really like us to create a network of people who support each other doing cooperative activities regardless of what software they're using, because a Drupal programmer, well, and sometimes you can work in Drupal 7 and not Drupal 6, they are different, but there are going to be a lot of skill sets that overlap among all these different types of software, and so we need to put together really decentralized teams of people who are willing to help each other out. Because I know with Community Weaver, one of the reasons that we ended up feeling a need to switch is we couldn't have site admin status on that they stopped giving it out. But even at the very beginning when Community Weaver was launched, I never saw a reason why you would have to have your own site admin. Like we could have 5 site admins for the whole country if people are willing to take on other sites. You don't have to be right in a community to deal with their software. So there are a lot of ways that we can share and exchange resources. So actually that brings us to how do we support each other better. So as we talk about this and as you share how you would like to be better supported, also share what you're willing to do, and let's hear what TOPS already did. So if there's a thing that TOPS is already doing or that TOPS is pursuing, let's flag that. So we can just go around the room again, or people who have something. Well, why don't we start with the folks who already know something that you think of about how we support each other better, so we make sure that.
Part of what I was thinking of with the enthusiasm thing is just the same spark we had when we started our organization, with this group of people who were alive and on fire to get a time bank going, and now that's kind of dwindled. So part of it is simply having a group of other people to meet with face to face on a regular basis to keep the fire alive. And that's one of the reasons I came today. I mean, I've always admired Stephanie's ability to make this her time bank fly. But the other reason was, you know, who else is out there in this area who wants to get this going? Who's got the fire already?
So do we have any activity in the room or any commitments to help pull it together so we meet regularly?
Sure, I think TOPS will want to do that. That's something I think that we certainly can work on in improving. That sort of where we want to head.
You know, I want to share something which is we hosted 2 conferences in Madison, 2007, 2009, and each one was such a leap forward for us. And actually, it's one of the reasons that I wanted to, as I tour, have people host gatherings, because there's a certain there's a certain art to hosting and getting experience with hosting. And if you, and also one of the conferences, someone had dropped the ball on organizing the food. And so like 2 days before we had our big Taste of Timebake event for the conference, I learned there was nothing set up for food.
Taste of Timebake?
Yeah. And
Tasteless
so
Timebake.
we put out emergency calls to all our members and our own networks, and I seriously just almost wept when I came in the room because it was the biggest feast we've ever seen. And we packed up tons of food to give away at the end. And it was so beautiful, and it was cool because Polly Leaster's on the Timebanks USA board. She's an anthropologist, and she said to me right then, she said that it's a huge contributor to any kind of tribal unity, putting on events and hosting other outsiders. And so if you were to do something where you just encourage each one to host, you know, you don't have to put all the burden on the TOPS organizers. You provide a little structure, here's how you do it, and then each one hosts, and then each one gets an opportunity to show off what they're doing. And members always like to step up for that, and then again, they get to practice. So that would be really nice. So a possibility would be to have it rotate around to different hosts.
Say quarterly.
Yeah, quarterly. Sounds cool. And you can have your retreats on Orcas.
Sounds really good.
I'll help that happen.
You provide the beds.
How else would people like to be supported? I know it came up with shared administration. Should I just write this down?
Yeah.
Shared administration. And what are ways concretely that we can share administrative burden?
I think that's going to be the role of TOPS.
And what exactly will that be?
Well, essentially what we're doing is the membership screening,
Okay.
the insurance, a coherent set of policies of...
Is it the general liability insurance and volunteer insurance?
Yes,
Okay,
and
great.
D&O.
Great. Wow, that's excellent.
Wait, are you getting volunteer insurance?
L&I think that's what you mean.
L&I.
Just L&I,
No, L&I plus general liability.
but not volunteer. Do you do volunteer insurance?
Yeah,
Dave,
through
do you do it through
SEMA.
SEMA? Okay.
It is, there's volunteer insurance.
Yes.
The liability covers volunteers,
Yeah.
and the
Okay.
covers volunteers.
So L&I, what's that? L?
Labor and
Labor and Industries, it's a workers' comp.
Oh,
It's
great.
volunteer insurance.
Great.
The policies and procedures.
This is
So
wonderful.
that everyone understands when they're on the data set that everyone is following the same rules. There are those that may not want to do all of the rules, and that's fine. We can set them up as a separate instance of their own time bank so that they have, the members on that rule, but we still can do that administration, that back office stuff, and still be able to accommodate different sets. And that's where we're looking at the church in Auburn, the school district here on the east side, as possibilities of their own standalone time bank, but still being able to be administered through an experienced organization.
That's excellent.
Process the money.
Yeah, the
Do
community
all-
weaver aspect as well. but-
Right, to manage all the community weaver pieces. And
Yeah.
the idea is to let the time banks focus on building the membership, quality relationships, and not have to deal with all the administration. So that 90% of their time literally is building their membership, getting exchanges moving, and building community. And everything else is done behind the scenes.
support.
Can we join?
I know, we're.
And we have
You've got
a
water
tbanks.org account, and then we have vashon.tbanks.org, eastside.tbanks.org, mi.tbanks.org.
West Seattle.
So, and so it all runs off of that same kind of thing. It simplifies a lot of things, and we're working in WordPress, the antithesis of Drupal. But we've learned enough of it that we can get things and done some good work here in the last several months.
So you have the templates for the website and the domain names.
Yeah.
Right. That's wonderful.
And we believe the whole point here is the economy of scale will create a sustainable, affordable way for time banks to exist.
I think that's really key. I think that's the only way Eastside Time Bank can really, should be sustainable long term and healthy, is not to have all the current expenses it does have now. It's not the best reason. The other thing is, though, I'd like to think that this organization would become a capacity building for all the time banks in Puget Sound.
Yeah.
You know, like resources for fundraising, information about personnel policies or management issues, a forum to come together to share learnings with each other. You know, those kinds of things become a real resource to build capacity.
And mutual commiseration in some instances.
Yeah. Great. Wow, that's really exciting what you guys are doing. Other things about how we support each other better? Has anyone done anything like pairing up with a mentor time bank or being a mentor to, I mean, I'm sure some of you just answer questions for new time banks. Has anyone formalized that relationship more or been more deliberate
Yeah,
about it?
Vashon has a contract with Eastside Time Bank, so Joan is
great.
mentoring me this year.
Great. So, and that's done mainly between the two individual time banks?
Yeah, that was before TOPS was kind of.
Okay. Yeah, and so maybe that would be something that TOPS might facilitate later. And I put the notes from today until the part where I started talking all the time. I put the notes from today on Build for the World. There's a regional gathering project on there. So you can go see the notes. And on those notes, we made a little form for people to fill out if you want to offer training and peer support. And then we can collect those in any regional, so TOPS could choose if you want to display them on a website or something, or just like be pointing people to each other. So that is a resource that you can go ahead and use if you'd like.
One of the shortcomings we have in Community Weaver, we're trying to develop a workaround on, is offers and requests exist on the database, but they exist on the database. You have to actively go and go in there. And we're trying to develop a push system where they'll be pushed out. Just every morning I get Amazon Local, Groupon, yada yada. It comes in front of me. Here's my thing. And we think that there's a time bank back in Pennsylvania that's developed the API to do this with Community Weaver, and that's what we're working on next, to be able to get something to push. So every morning or once a week, you'll be able to pick the frequency. Here are the new offers, here are the new requests, and once a month, here's all the offers, here's all the requests. And that, I think, is a lot more effective than, oh, I have to remember to log in to go in to look at the database.
Right.
Time for Talents has been very useful. We have a weekly update that
What's
also
that?
includes messages that we want to put out or individuals want to put out as well.
Maybe that's where I got the idea when I came over last year.
We didn't have it then.
Is your itinerary on the website someplace, one of your websites?
It is. It's on under my name, StephanieRierick.com. I actually have one copy over there, and I'm playing tonight. If anyone wants to come at the Rendezvous Jewel Box Theater. I sent you an email just last night because I didn't realize you didn't know. But it's at 9. So if you come out and chat.
No, I was thinking about like around the world where you're going and where you're going to be talking about time.
Oh yeah, no, I just wanted to share that. No, it's all on there. So
It
it's,
is?
yeah,
Okay.
there's like I just put it because I needed one place for everything. It's on the show's page, so it does have the timing stuff, and it also is on the printed version. There's some things being added to, so this only goes up through the West
this western leg, but then I go east over the fall. So yeah, it's on there, and
Because I deal with ferries, I never want to go to Seattle, but I am willing to travel to New Orleans if you're going to
hopefully New Orleans close to Halloween. We're trying to nail it down. And then also, ideally, if all works out well, New Orleans will be host to an international conference next year. Hopefully, it seems like there's good movement in that direction.
Wouldn't that be
Please not during the summer.
No, that's the deliberate choice. It's to either be spring or fall. All right, so I think it's about time to wrap up. We have 7 minutes left. Any last thoughts about ways we might support each other better? Does anyone want to share things that you wish we would have gotten to today, so I know for the future? Oh, and if you want to, I actually don't have a real evaluation thing, but I have these open-ended things, which are probably better, actually left over from a totally different kind of meeting, but it would help me to know your comments and takeaways. So, that's that. And so what is next for TOPS? And for the rest of you? What are our next steps together? It seems like you have a lot underway.
If everyone is fine, I think I have most everyone's email address. You all fine with me emailing you, not BCC, but so everyone has each other's email? Any issues with that?
Thank you.
Great. So I can certainly send an email to everyone, put the links to the notes, I'll put the links to the Knowledge Commons information.
And build?
Yeah,
it's
Project
perfect.
for the World, where the notes are.
That'd be great.
Thanks for sharing that, Dave and Stephanie. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and experiences and facilitating the discussion today. It was a wonderful gathering. And thank you all for sharing. I think it was such a fabulous to hear everyone's experiences and the challenges and the positives that have been going on all around the Northwest and bringing them together. So thank you so much, as well as for the great salads that everyone brought.
And thank you.
Thank you.